Welcome back to OTD Military History, another live stream. Just apologize in advance. Sorry if my voice is a little weird. I've been having some allergy troubles lately. I think I finally got the good meds figured out. So hopefully it's getting better. I feel better. I don't feel so cloggy anymore. So it's quite nice. So thanks again for coming out, hanging out. Never done a live stream like this on a Saturday night. It doesn't really feel Saturday night yet because the sun's still up for me. Got the window open. It's quite nice. So it's weird sounds. Let me know either from the allergies or if there's any kind of crazy bird noises coming in. I apologize for that, and I can fix it if necessary. Before I begin kind of with the questions, because I've already got some from a couple days ago from a post I did on YouTube. Just a couple things I want to start off with. I'm at a point with OTD where I think it can go higher and reach higher levels than I'm currently at. However, to get there, I need help. So what I do on a daily basis really is usually history work. I'm on a short-term contract currently with the government department, that kind of thing. Very grateful to have it, enjoying the work. I just enjoy doing this too, right? So I would be hopefully at some point be able to do kind of this full time, working on videos, interacting with the community, that kind of thing is something I'd really like to be able to do. Covering Canadian military history and the stories in it is kind of why I did my PhD. Obviously, there's the whole academic aspect to that, all the credentials and whatever. But that's one of the reasons I did it. I'm just so enjoying it so much, I figured I might as well get something out of it. And that's why I did it. So this is why I'm doing it. However, with the help and to keep this going, I don't know if it'll just kind of stay at the same level and kind of become a hobby, or I can take it further. Is something you guys could help me with. So getting more patrons would be a huge help. Couple of bucks a month, a few quid, euros, whatever, would be extremely helpful. The more I have of those, the more likely this is to do better, because that way I can put more time and resources into it. A lot of the Patreon stuff already goes back into the channel with all the software and everything I've got to keep updating and everything, keep paying for and all that other stuff. I'd love to be able to do some travel just for OTD. That would be amazing. So anything like that, if you can help, or becoming a channel member through YouTube is extremely helpful as well, as is super likes, super chats, the stickers, all that fun stuff through YouTube is also extremely helpful. Any amount you can give really helps out and helps me kind of continue what I'm doing, because without that, I can't do it, because the ad revenue is just not enough on here. So a little bit more would be great and very helpful to kind of keep everything rolling and get better and better. The more I do, the better it gets. It just gets exponentially better and better and better the more I work on it. So kind of have a goal for the end of the year. I know we're getting kind of the midway point there, though, is hit that 10,000 subscriber mark. I know subscribers aren't everything, but that would be cool to hit that. So too, if you can share what I'm doing, share with all that kind of stuff, it's great, and all that fun stuff. So it would be really helpful if you can do that. If you can, just kind of let people know. Yes, sorry, I got some notes up here, but yes, there are stickers you can do through. It's kind of like pay. It's like a super chat, like a super thanks. I think I don't know if you can do it on live streams. I don't remember off the top of my head. But you can do them on other places and everything. It's basically just saying, thanks to the creator and you enjoy their work, and an extra little something for them. So it's something like that. That said, yeah, I'd love to hit 10,000. That's kind of just, I like to have goals in mind just to kind of keep going and keep pushing and getting better. So that's one of them I really have, is for the end of the year, is to grow that, and also to grow more on the client side of things. Research for people, helping people with their other stuff, with their own history work, would be my ultimate goal. So that would be great. So if anyone can help, I know a lot of you already are patrons, and thank you so much. It does mean the world to me and makes all the difference. And there would be no OTD at this point without you guys who are patrons and YouTube channel members. Without you guys, this wouldn't exist anymore. Would just, nothing new would just be sitting there. Nothing new would be coming out probably. So it's great. So anyway, thank you again for that, and I really appreciate it. So a couple days ago, I put out a post on YouTube asking, what would you ask a military historian? Like, what's your questions for military historians? There's something, kind of bottled up you'd love to get answered. So I got quite a few, good number. Some are real deep. Some in terms of their broad questions, I'm going to answer the best I can tonight. Some are more like detailed, like some that need research, and I left a message for those people saying it's going to take some more time to kind of get that thing. It's like specific, and hopefully I can get into the archive and have more time just for that. So a few of them are fairly easy. So just give me 1 second here. I want to pull them up because I just kind of threw them into sorry, 1 second here. Threw them into a PowerPoint just so they're easy to move through. So the first one's pretty easy. This one is in reference to the tunics uniforms from the Second World War, World War II. So there's a slight difference. I mean, it's the battle dress. They all relatively look similar. I mean, other than the really small details. Again, I'm not a uniform expert. That's not my area of expertise, but I do know that the color was different. The British ones, the Canadian battle dress was a little greener. Whereas the British was a little more that khaki serge color. Also, because of restrictions in Britain, the fit was a little tighter for the British uniforms as compared to the Canadians. And then again, who made them and all that stuff is kind of different. So for Warbrick, if you're watching now or later, there's not a ton of difference. But again, this isn't really my expertise. I'm sure there's lots on YouTube who talk about like the nitty gritty, about like the pleating and the pockets and all that stuff, but the basics are the same as far as I know. Okay, so this one, actually I'll go here first because it sounds like this was a new subscriber, new follower of the channel. I mean, we talk about this a lot. How much of a contribution has Canada made in the World War I and World War II? Obviously, it's a great contribution. That's something I talk about all the time. How big of a contribution Canadian makes and relative to what Canada can do, right? A country of 8 million in the First World War, 11 million in the Second. I mean, just the amount of people involved in the First World War is massive. And then the Second, you really see Canadian production and industry base really skyrocket in ships and aircraft and everything, food, stocks, ammunition, weapons, just goes through the roof. So those are huge. So actually what I would have liked to focus on here, because that's a big question, and then that would really be something we talk about forever. NCMP trucks, so Canadian military pattern trucks, which are huge. They're everywhere. Soviet Union, North Africa, they're all over the place. I was just in the Netherlands, which we can talk about later. Tons of those because they were just sitting around at the end of the war. So a lot of those sort of survived. There are museum pieces and private collectors and everything like that, which is great. But those make a huge impact on the war. So what I want to talk about, though, is so how far, and then the second part of the question is how far would our allies and enemies have gotten without Canada? Obviously, like Canada, like I already said, Canada is small. Would the allies still win without, if Canada stays, neutral or doesn't exist? The allied forces would still have won, right? Canadian, he does make it easier, right? The Canadian contribution makes it easier. That's how I like to look at it in terms of that. It's not saying like, oh, without Canada, this doesn't happen. So I think that's a good way of looking at it. It just makes it so much easier. I mean, Canada outproduces all the Axis countries combined on its own, right? So like the United States, Britain, Soviet Union gets, all on its own is enough to go. But, Canada just makes things easier, right? I'm working on a new video about Lend-Lease and, financial aid and all of that stuff and how that's all connected, right? Canada gives as part of Lend-Lease, but indirectly benefits, but gives to the Soviet Union. It's a tricky question. So Canadian presence in both conflicts just make things easier, right? It makes things much easier and contributes to the way it goes, right? So it's not to say, oh, you can't do this without Canada, because I don't think that's accurate. However, it makes things for the Allies much easier and much more difficult for the Axis, right? It's just another one in the fight that's just going to make it so much more difficult to do. You know what I mean? Like, especially in the Second World War, right? It's just a massive amounts of contributions industrially from multiple countries, and Canada's just thrown in the mix. The location of Canada plays a role, obviously, in the Second World War on the other side of the North Atlantic, and holding down that flank and getting stuff from the United States, particularly early on in the Second World War with the convoys and across the ocean and everything like that. So it really adds to it. So it's really an interesting thing to think about in terms of that. But again, the shipping is massive to me. I mean, yeah, you guys are bringing up really good points. Things like mutual aid. Yeah, like I'm going to do a video on that. It's coming. It is coming. That's one I am working on because somebody requested it. So it's going to be like mutual aid, lend lease is going to work its way in there, gold reserves, all that fun stuff. It's going to be complicated. I was working on it late last night, try and get that moving, to try and plan this thing out, just because there's so many moving pieces involved in that. So it's an interesting one. So that's just kind of a way to think about it moving forward, and a bit of a show. Sorry, a bit of a bit of. Sorry, I got distracted by one of the comments. I'll get to it in a second, but. A way to think about what's coming forward. I got kind of like a coming attractions. So Eric was on the tour I just gave in the Netherlands, and one of my bus. We had the 2 buses. Go bus 2, woo! And when the day was done, we'd be heading back to the hotel, or in between, long drives between battlefields or what have you. They'd yell out story time, and I'd use literally the mic at the front of the bus and tell stories, kind of like what I do with the live streams, just on a bus. Just kind of talking, answering questions, except for the one day again. Sorry about that, guys, when I wasn't feeling the best, but. Yeah, lots of good story time. So this is basically the virtual version of story time. And I don't want to move past Jeffrey's comment here, which is true, right? Is First Canadian Division is the only fully equipped, again, 1940 standard fully equipped, that was available in Britain at the time. Yeah, that is something. It is obviously something, and it's something I do talk about often. Is had say that the Germans come across that weren't in a position to do so, but had they. First Canadian Division was really the only one able to do that. So it would have, they would have been in the front line trying to hold that off. And of course, everything else going on. So again, I'm not trying to minimize our contribution. I'm just trying to answer the question, using the perspectives I have, that academic training, everything like that. Canadians make a huge contribution. I say outsized, I already said that off the hop, outsized contribution to what the country is in size at the time and everything like that. But again, to say in the grand scheme of things, would the Allies lose or would the Germans win? No. I don't think it changes that much, but the contribution of Canada is massive when it's going on. So that's part of it. So I'm not trying to minimize it. Obviously, I do the opposite of that every day. I'm trying to tell the Canadian stories as best as possible. And as often as possible. And again, that's where I need your help in terms of, patrons and YouTube channel members and anything else like you can give, super chats, that kind of fun stuff. That really helps because I can't just do this all on my own. It's difficult to do. But again, I'm not minimizing. I'm just trying to answer the question, how I think about it in terms of that. But no, definitely the Canadian contribution really helps the Allies win easier, right? And I know it's not easy, but you know what I mean in terms of that, right? It really helps secure that victory. And again, it's not an easy one, but it makes it easier, if that makes sense. So the BC ATP has also been brought up, which is massive. Like I often say, it's actually Canada's greatest contribution to Allied victory in the Second World War. So it stands for British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. It is a massive contribution by Canada. Canada pays for, I think it's even more than 3/4, if not closer to almost 90%, if not more, of the total cost. So it's training air crews, particularly British, Canadian, Australian, and New Zealanders, and South Africans eventually, and a few others, Americans from other places as well within the British Empire in Canada, away from, marauding Luftwaffe planes, and getting them the time and the space, literally the space, because Canada's got tons of space. One thing we've always had is space, not population so much, but space. Space has never been an issue. So that's done throughout Canada to give them time and space to do these things, to train and learn on the single engine aircraft. They move up to multiple if that's what the stream they were going into for bombers, fighter pilots, all that kind of stuff. Like lots of work has been done on the BCATP with organizations like Project 44 has done a map on it. Did stuff with the RCAF Foundation about that. So you can check all that out as well later on if you like. It covers all that. It's a magnificent program that was Canadian driven. There was some little bit of political wrangling to get it done. The British wanted done it before the war. King, and as he was, didn't want Canadian sovereignty to get squished necessarily so, because he was always worried about his political and electoral prospects. Said no, but once the war started, it became and instantly started. It was massive, and it went the whole war pretty much, and just trains tens of thousands of pilots and air crew. Makes all the difference in that respect. for across things, Bomber Command, Fighter Command, Coastal Command, all of that stuff. It's a massive program. So again, I'm not belittling it. I'm just trying to answer the question in the spirit it was asked. Yeah, Roe was a difficult fight on that whole area of Normandy. I mean, Canadians made massive sacrifices. I'm going to keep saying it so no one comes back later. But yeah, it's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to say it in the grand scheme of, massive world war. Of course, it would have made things more difficult for the Allies, but it's not going to change the outcome. So this is, I think, a good one because I had a similar question that kind of breaks down into other ones, and I'll get there in a second. So the best course of practice for history for, say, an average person to make. So I think about this in two ways. I don't think this can be a surprise for some of you, but maybe for new viewers or some of you, but I tend to think of it in two minds, right? I'm academically trained as a PhD, I have the PhD and everything. So I tend to think about it that, right? The academic way of studying things and thinking about it critically and trying to understand and why things are done the way they're done, right? That, looking at the documents, thinking critically, not hero worshiping. Like, I'm not a big fan of that, really. And again, that's no surprise, I think, for a lot of you, because I think that gets in the way. You can't really understand this stuff if you don't try to take as much objectivity as you can. I don't believe in true objectivity, but you try to do as best you can. And that does sometimes take emotion out of it. You have to try to do that because on the other side, and part of the question here is the duty of remembrance, right? To me, that's different, right? You can go to, I was just there, say at Groesbeck, outside of Nijmegen, or go to Holten or Reichswald Forest Cemetery, all that stuff. At that time, I don't need to be like, what's the historiography of the symbolism of cemeteries, and should they have done this or not done this? You can do both. I mean, it's difficult for both, but I do think not necessarily duty, but to remember is massive, because if you forget these things can come back. And sorry, I'm just reading some of these comments and I get confused. Something about a stinky bug. I don't know what that means. Sorry, I get distracted, as you know. So I see that as different, right? You can sometimes set that stuff aside and just do the remembrance. Like I try to do that with the Twitter account and the daily posting. Sometimes it can be critical and digging a little deeper. Other times it's just trying to remember, a soldier, aviator, sailor, whatever, who died in the service of Canada. So I see those two things as different. I think there's a time and a place for both, obviously. But for the average person, I think you can do both. It's just keep things in mind, right? Like when you're reading a book, try to keep a critical eye. Try to, and this is going to connect to kind of another question from Pat, I think, who is watching. Yeah, Pat is here about it. So, looking at it in that way, try to be critical. Don't, even sometimes I see it with authors, right? Historians get like a cult following, and I'm kind of like, that's not good, because you're not going to fully understand or take appreciation of what's going on. You have a favorite author of Bob Smith and you don't criticize anything or look at it critically in any way, you're just going to believe anything they say, or their interpretations are not flawed in any way, and you're just going to go with it. That's problematic. So I think that's a way for the average person to do. You don't have to have massive amounts of education to do that. I think that's a skill everyone needs to have, right? We need to do that every day with things we see and how we interact with each other and things with news and all of that. You can do that. You can think about it. You can check the footnotes. You can go and check their bibliography. You can read about the authors online. Lots of things like that. That's not something that takes a ton of work. It doesn't take education. Anyone can do that. And I think that is how I think about it in terms of practicing history, because that's how most people start, right? They just start with reading what are called secondary sources, which are books. I don't have any around me other than stuff that's under a bunch of piles because my office is a mess from getting back from my trip. But that's what a secondary source is. It's written after the event, whereas a primary is written at the time. That's the difference. That's where I think I know that's where a lot of people begin, and that's the place to start, right? Is thinking critically about that for the average person. So I would see it as a way to do that, is when you're reading, just think about it. You don't, again, it doesn't have to be mean-spirited. It doesn't have to be angry. Just think about it. Like, okay, well, hold on, wait a second. Something here doesn't make sense. Or does that make sense? Let me check. You don't have to do it with everything, but I think it's a great way of thinking about this stuff and how anyone can do it. And again, duty of remembrance is a whole other thing. Again, this is just personal opinion. You don't have to believe me. But I don't see it as a duty of remembrance. I hope people will do it. I don't think they have to do it, because I don't think people have to do anything in that sense. But it's nice when people do it. Remembrance Day ceremonies or other ceremonies, or visiting memorials and having reverence around them and things like that. I prefer when people do it. I'm not going to be like, that's forced, everyone should do it, because that's not who I am. But it is nice to see, and it is something I like to see more being done. Things like that. So I think I think that's part of it. And again, I could talk more about that later on. I could do more like a video about that, kind of how about to go about doing that. But again, to me, it's just the biggest thing that anyone can do in the first step. And it's most of the work is think critically, right? Why is this made the way it's made? Who made it? Why are they doing it this way? Are the words they're using kind of leading in a certain way? Why are they doing that? It doesn't hurt to stop and think, right? Not just take it in at face value and that's it. That's the biggest lesson I learned way back when I started as an undergrad, a long time ago now, quite a while ago now. It's just hitting me how long ago that actually was, almost 20 years ago. That's a big lesson I took is, what does that mean? Why do people do what they do? That's what the study of history is, but that's also something you can do while you're reading history or how you're engaging with it, right? Apply those same principles to the author. To me, that's massive. The author, the video maker, the documentarian, the director, whatever. That's a massive lesson that I've taken from that, and it's stuck with me, and it's done me pretty well so far. I've gotten where I've gotten to. So, and thank you for your kind words here. I appreciate that. That's great to hear. Thank you so much. And I agree here. I do agree there. Just with the way things have gone recently in the world, particularly in Eastern Europe, I think it's an appreciation and understanding of our military past because it is necessary, because I think it saves lives. I do believe that, and this is going to kind of come back to another part of Pat's question. So I just want to make sure one thing here. Okay, cover that. Pat's got a lot going on here. Okay, so these are, okay, there's a few. So we'll come back to it. So this one's an interesting one. Nicholas can't watch now. He told me he's coming later on. He'll watch it after. So it's an interesting one. I don't know too much about Czechoslovakian military power in 1938. I'm not going to lie. But I did have one mind of this. So the question is, if they weren't betrayed by the British and French governments at Munich, yeah, they kind of were. How well could the Czechoslovakian forces held out against the Germans, assuming no other jackals joined Germany's attack? Okay, so that's an interesting way. I don't think they were done very well. I mean, they had their own arms production. They were putting in border defenses, but the Germans had an advantageous position on them, and they could have just run them through with numbers, as the Germans did at other points in the war. And I don't think they would have held out any longer than, say, Poland did. It's a different thing to me. So I don't think it lasts much longer. However, what I think is interesting is assuming no other jackals part, because again, this isn't trying to disparage anyone at all, but just trying to understand this is when when Czechoslovakia gets taken over, other countries do take chunks of Czechoslovakia. Poland's one of them, right? Other countries surrounding take chunks of that country. It's not just the Germans. So it's not so cut and dry here of how these things are going in 38, 39. Like that's a big thing for me, is understanding these things. Yeah, I mean, Poland doesn't deserve what happens to them, but I'm just saying it's not as clear cut as it sounds. And I get why Nicholas frames it this way, and I understand it. And it's something I hope other people have looked into, because again, it's not my expertise. This was Czechoslovakian military power. I don't know it that well. I just know kind of about, the arms production that the Germans use and some of the defenses they were building in the West, which actually were in the Sudetenland, which were the chunks that were given up or taken away at Munich, which just kind of left Czechoslovakia defenseless, when the Nazis do move in March 1939, and for the rest of the country, basically. So other than that, I don't know too much. So I don't know. I can't, play that out hypothetically. But I think it's interesting to keep in mind is when that country breaks apart, other countries get involved. It's not just Germany, it's neighbors. And I mean, a lot of them are German aligned, but Poland gets in on it. So it's an interesting kind of way of thinking about it. And maybe I could do something about it in the future, but currently not so much. So again, if you had other questions or other people asked other questions, I did message as best I could on the original post, like Pete for yours. It's going to take literally like that research, right? You're asking about a certain gun on a certain boat. I can't do that off the top of my head, right? It's not an opinion question. It's literally like, oh, it was this date. So, I mean, if I can get in and the archive and do that stuff, hopefully I can do that at some time in the near future. Other jackals like Hungary, Romania are part of that. I can't remember off the top of my head of who is all involved, but I know Poland, these two are. I think that's it. And obviously the German parts of it. I mean, that again, you can debate that forever. From some discussion of it in the 30s, they do have a very well, they're producing arms, right? They always had been doing that. There had always been, even an Austrian-Hungarian, when it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was producing what becomes Czechoslovakia. So it's a massive armaments industry. Now, how well does that do when the shooting actually starts? We'll never really know in that context, but it is something to keep in mind. So I'm going to go back and Pat already says I don't have to answer them all, but I think they're really, really interesting in the way I want to go about it, because I wanted to jump on them. Sorry, it's distorted a little bit, but this is the best I could do to fit it all in. So we got some good questions coming in the sidebar. So sorry, think about that. I'm having some trouble there. There we go. So I'll get back to those. We'll move to that. This is going to be the last one other than one I'll use to talk about my trip later on. So this one was a really good question, Pat. Number one, you can see it here. So why so much civilian interest? And then it's asterisk among perhaps only a small set of particularly obsessed civilians. Why so much civilian interest in military history? As a training tool for the profession of arms, it has value. But why do we as civilians seem so taken with it? Fundamentally, it is the study of maximizing death and destruction upon one's enemies. That doesn't seem healthy. That last part I kind of agree with. Yeah, it's not healthy in terms of that, because it's the study of death. Humans killing other humans. It's not great. It's full of sad stories and vivid descriptions and behaviors and awful things. So yeah, that I kind of agree with. It is like days that are doing this stuff. Sometimes or if I'm doing this, separate side project on something like the Holocaust or what's going on in the trenches, right? And the descriptions of those, it's awful. However, I do think that there is a value to, say, civilian studying. I talked about it a bit before, but it's the remembering. This is always something that's been in the back of my mind studying is, why should civilians care, right? Because not necessarily everyone, but at certain points, someone might be in a position to stop this from happening, right? If they don't know that it's awful, why wouldn't they just let it go forward, right? I mean, that's probably not going to happen, but you never know. They don't know how terrible this stuff can get. They might just let it happen. You know what I mean? So it's just, to me, it's a very basic reason, but to understand, I think one of the best ways to stop war is to talk about it, because it is awful. It's truly awful. It's terrible for most people involved. It's part of it. So I think that's something that literally cannot be forgotten. It's not just, glory and good stories. Things like PTSD connected to combat and service are becoming more mainstream. Still don't think we're there yet, but it's getting better in terms of that, more understanding of the negatives and everything like that. But then you have other people who are just pushing it forward as a narrative that's what they want. And they don't get involved themselves, but they want others to do it. So that's what I mean. You got to try and stop that. But yes, and also too, there's a good way of thinking about that is, again, going back to, that objectivity, right? Is civilians can provide a different, perspective. And that's what history is all about, right? It's different perspectives, different arguments, different ways of thinking about these things. If it's pure military all the time, we're only going to get that subset of thoughts, right? If someone's military aligned and only military aligned or even retired, whatever, we only get that. If we don't have civilians who haven't, say, been inside a military structure or not been involved with it at all and have other experiences out in, say, their working life, or they move into another career doing history or something like that, we gain from that. So that goes for any history. But specifically for military history, I think it's got a huge value because you can bring different things in, understand it differently, how you understand sources, why you understand human motivations, what you take from it, all that fun kind of stuff I think that's important. But yeah, there is elements of it where it's kind of weird, and some people have unhealthy obsessions with things, and it's not great for a lot of people to do it because they don't think they really do it in a healthy way, and don't try to understand that it is truly awful, right? If someone's just, not knocking anybody, but if you think it's all just painting cool tanks all day long and stuff like that, to me that's not necessarily problematic, but I think that kind of stumbles into this territory, right? Of, it's just cool tanks and stuff. Like, that's, to me, is problematic because there's more to it than that, which I know you guys know, but I'm just trying to say generally speaking. So also, I think just because people have connections to it, right? We're still close enough. I mean, that generation is dwindling every day, but the World War II generation, a lot of us have connections to it, right? We knew people who fought in that war, or directly knew them, right? Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever, even some siblings, things like that. I think that plays a huge role, right, of why people are interested, because we're still connected, right? It's only, 2 generations for myself, and I'm born in the late 80s. So, because my grandfather and his generation were connected to it on both sides too. So I think that plays a role to it. I think that's played a role personally. Can't speak for everybody, but that's my kind of thing to go for that. Hopefully that's enough of an answer for you, Pat. But it's an interesting question. Yeah, actually, Susan, you put it a great way here, but better than I could for a second here. It's a toolkit. Exactly. I think this is kind of what I was going back to with the earlier question about, what can the average person do? It's a toolkit. You can learn things. You can learn how to do things, how to think, how to, all that good stuff, even a hobby, I get it. Or, impetus for travel, all that great stuff, right? There's more to it than that. I mean, I wouldn't have met all you guys without this interest, right? So, and that's something I extremely value, me personally, and why I want to keep doing this stuff is to keep those connections with all the people I've met and everybody who's watching right now. To me, that's valuable, and I wouldn't have that without this. You know what I mean? So it's how I mean it in that sense. So hold on here. I just want to, it's not that your questions are bad, Pat. I just want to answer them in a certain way. So I think I want to move to, so we've already kind of covered 3B. So I want to go to 3A here. How do professional military historians distinguish between intentionally deceptive revisionism, enthusiastic amateur, or professional reinterpretation to suit a preferred narrative and genuinely new research? And how can non-professionals do the same? So that's a really good question connected to. It's again about that thinking. That's how I do it in terms of sources. Sources to me are pretty much the be all end all. You can do whatever you want, whatever. If you don't have the sources, I don't trust you. You know what I mean? You can say whatever you want. If you don't have that rock solid foundation of sources, it means nothing. And they have to be accessible. That's the huge part to me, right? I'm not saying everyone has to go into the archive to read that or whatever to understand the book or the article or whatever it is they're reading. If I can't publicly access that, how can I trust you? You know what I mean? Like, if it's in a private collection, great. I can't see that. I'm going to be skeptical. That's where I start to get skeptical. If I can't see what you're looking at, why should I trust you? You know what I mean? Like, this idea of talking about revisionism and being deceptive and everything like that. That's how you do it, right? That's how I do it. Or I look at the sources. And if there is no source list, that's the biggest red flag I find. Because there's books, I got books behind me that don't have source lists for whatever reason. And I don't like it. You know what I mean? That bothers me the most is, why aren't you sharing your sources? Is it like literally a list? Like, why aren't you telling me where I can go find this? Whether it's in a book, an archive, I want to see it myself if I choose to do so. Why aren't you letting me do that? Why are you hiding something? That's when I don't trust people. And I mean, other of the stuff, it takes years of practice and understanding, knowing things, right? People make stuff up. People don't, or get things wrong unintentionally or get mixed up. I mean, I haven't wrote a book, but I wrote my dissertation, right? Sometimes things just get, mixed up and mistakes happen, right? Part of a chapter gets moved accidentally and you don't notice it, or you're so, glazed over, it just happens, right? Things like that happen, but sometimes people do it intentionally, or they try to distract and, put other things in there to what everything else going on. So to me, that's part of it. And again, that can be done by anybody just trying to understand what's going on in terms of how the thing is made, right? Why, if you say, oh, in a closet somewhere. And I'm like, well, that doesn't do anybody any good. If I can't look at it, I can't trust you. You know what I mean? That's when I get skeptical. And part of it here is yeah, amateur, professional. I don't really draw those lines anymore because I don't really see where that stops. What does that even mean? I mean, professional, it means I know get paid, but how much you getting paid, right? Some people don't get paid a lot. Some amateurs make more money, right, from the books that they get put out, but they'd be called amateur. You know what I mean? I don't like to distinguish like that anymore. But that's the biggest thing for me is, again, this is kind of why I wanted to answer these in tandem with the earlier question. But Pat, it's a good question. These are tons of great questions, actually. And then, yeah, I can keep going. But that's the biggest one in terms of that one. And I think I kind of answered 3B earlier, hopefully. But yeah, that's the biggest thing I would take away from this right now is take a skeptical eye, look at what you're reading at, where are they getting it from? That's the big one to me. That's how you know it's new, right? Is it an archive that you know exists, but you haven't been to, or you've heard they got something in? You know, if you can't communicate and can't get into this stuff, that's when the problems start. You know, that's the biggest issue. So number 2, I just have one in mind. What military event subjects commonly discussed in the public space need to be debunked, explained, understood with greater nuance? You know what I mean? There's tons of them, obviously, but the one that just kind of come to mind recently is generally, because I taught a course on this, is the First World War and kind of what that looked like. That's the one that sticks out to me because it's a good example. And again, where the critical eye comes in of how it was just trench warfare of millions of soldiers getting slaughtered for no reason. Like, that's still out there all over the place online, people's conversations, because I know, because they say it, even to me. It's just not true. It's all part and parcel of kind of what I've been talking about before. Is that's just not how it went. There's innovation, things change over 4 years, different tactics develop, but also in the situation, sometimes there's nothing better you can do with the technology available to you. Because I've had that question asked of me. My dad actually asked me that once. It's like, if you could, with what you know now, but using what they had then, could you change it? And I go, probably not all that much. Yeah, there's things I could probably do, or tell them to move resources towards one area or the other, blah, blah, blah. But if it's just what I know now in terms of, say, tactics or developments, but only have things in 1915, you know what I mean? It's difficult to do. It could change it in some ways, but it's difficult. So that's the example I like to use is World War I and trying to get that understood better. And it's why I thought of that, because of the question, the way you said it, Pat, with greater nuance. That's the one that, that's the type that is, deserves greater nuance. This is a massive conflict, obviously, and I say this all the time. It has a massive impact on Canada, massive impact on the way Canada develops the way it does. I mean, it's a long process that takes it through the Second World War, but it starts, I would say, in a lot of ways from the First World War and continues on. But again, it's a good worth understanding properly instead of, improperly, and trying to use these stereotypical or mythological ways of understanding it. And I think that's one that is really, really important. Okay, so number 4, I think, is an interesting one, because I think 3B already kind of covered. So 4, what is your favorite or least favorite event in military history that particularly went far differently from the accepted public story, and what actually happened? That's a good one. That's a really, really good one. The one I want to think about is not necessarily that it is done incorrectly, but Juno Beach, to me, is a big one. I think it fits that criteria pretty well, because I see it a lot on the YouTube channel and stuff like that, comments of saying Juno Beach was easy. It was a cakewalk, nothing happened. Some of that's just anti-Canadianism, which is a weird thing to say, but it does exist. People just don't like Canada because they just don't like Canada for whatever reason. I mean, sure, some of them have justified reasons, but they just say that just to kind of, take the piss out of Canadians, which is not fair. I don't like when people do that, generally speaking. However, Juno Beach is a very difficult thing to take, right? We see these videos and footage of it afterwards, not looking like Omaha Beach, right? Well, it's not, covered in cliffs and bunkers and things like that. Doesn't make it easy to take. It wasn't easy to take. It just looks easy after the fact, right? That's one of the big things to me is, okay, well, understanding what happened before those cameras started rolling, right? Or when those photos are taken, or when they're taken from. That's a big one for me, is trying to understand what actually happens on D-Day itself. For something that's so covered so much and such the topic of so much debate, it's so poorly understood. I mean, you hear this all the time, right? We don't need to talk about D-Day anymore, and people get bored of it. And I get that. I do. I understand that. But for these generalized understandings of it, we don't seem to get it at all. Like it's really weird. There's not a lot going on there. I mean, people don't really get it. They think it's Saving Private Ryan, and it's not. Like even Omaha wasn't Saving Private Ryan across the whole way. It's just there's parts of Omaha where they're unopposed. No one talks about that. You know what I mean? It's there's not enough understanding of what truly goes on. I mean, historians get it because it's what they do, but other people don't really get it. They don't fully understand it. They think they know it's bad, but they don't know what that means, or they don't think it's bad at all on certain beaches versus others. Every beach had its challenges. It's a difficult day. It's an amphibious operation. Amphibious landings are always difficult, whether it's crossing a river or the freaking English Channel. It's never easy. So it's not like it's easy, I guess is the way to say it. It's one I think is not understood. And and Willie, I think you're right. They all have their own differences and difficulties and inland challenges, right? That don't even get talked about, right? Like Hillman Battery doesn't get talked about outside British circles a lot of the time. I mean, Utah inland doesn't get talked about a lot. With the water and the flooding and the causeways and all that doesn't get too much discussion. So they all have difficulties. It's not just on the sand or what's in a photo. You know what I mean? That's what I like to think, and that's how I like to think about these things. And hopefully that kind of covers an event for you, Pat. And because of course I obviously think about Normandy a lot for personal interest. It's just there's a lot going on. Okay, so I think that's good for there. Hopefully that if that's not good enough for you, Pat, please let me know. Yeah, I mean, parts of Omaha went okay, right? Parts went really, really well after they cleared some resistance. They were able to move in from Utah and around. And some parts were difficult. Other parts, they almost failed. It's like third wave isn't even getting up the cliffs, right? So it's, again, each beach has its own difficulties, its own challenges, everything going on. And it's just not the strip of sand, right? That seems to be another understanding of, you still got to move inland. If you take a beach, that's great and all, but if you don't take the beach, you get a Gallipoli. If you only take the beach, you get a Gallipoli. And Normandy was not a Gallipoli, luckily, but it wasn't an easy thing to do. Yeah, you're welcome, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and you're right, Pete. Waiting ashore unopposed makes for boring movies. Yeah, well, why do you think that Spielberg did what he did? Yeah. Okay, so hold on here. Yes, there's one more thing in there, and I'll come back to that after. I just want to see where we're at in terms of, yes, you guys are up late again. I appreciate that, and I love how friendly everyone is. Thank you. Everyone's saying hi. I always love that here. World War II TV. Love that in the sidebar. It does make me feel all warm and fuzzy. Oh yeah, Great Dominion. Yeah, yeah. I have never talked to him. The great, British muzzle loaders. Maybe I can when I get some more time. That's what I've been trying to do. I have things coming, and I'll get those out when I can, when things are firmed up. I mean, like Ivy and Peg coming on next week. So getting back into the guest live streams. I'm just working a full-time job currently. So the days are busy. It's hard to organize everything, especially when I was out of the country. But things are coming. So maybe I can reach out to that channel and see if maybe we could do a little chat. Is Canada small? Geographically, no. Population at the time, yes. 8 million around the First World War and 11 during the Second. So geographically, no. Population-wise, yes. At the time, we're growing now, though. We're growing much better rates, actually. So I'm just going through here real quick. Oh, here's one. So from Susan, just leave it up there for a second. So I took a New York Times quiz. It said only 13% of 8th graders were proficient in history in the U.S. What do you think? Do you think historians need to be activists? How does Canada compare? I assume it's the same. I would assume it's very much the same. Rates of that, or I'm not necessarily sure what proficient in history means at an 8th grade level. But I assume it's very similar. In terms of activism, I don't necessarily, that word is such a bad connotation, especially nowadays, where you're an activist or you're a history page. Why are you having opinions? I mean, you don't know what history is. It's like, what? I think historians need to stand up for themselves. I think a lot of people need to stand up for themselves, and historians need to be one of them. No one's going to fight for you. You got to fight for yourself. That's why another reason why I do what I do is to keep history in top of mind. If it's out there all the time, people are going to stumble on it and find it and maybe get interested in it, or at least understand its value. That's something I try to do, and hopefully I can keep up. So that's kind of important to me. So I don't necessarily see it as necessarily being an activist, but it's not enough to, sit around dusty offices at universities anymore. Those days are gone. Those days were gone a long time ago when no one realized it or didn't seem to notice or hoped it wasn't true is probably the better way of saying it. But if historians don't stick up for themselves, sitting in silos no one's going to care, and you're going to be dead, and no one's going to remember what your work is anyway because no one can find it. If it's in old books and journals, no one can access. I think historians need to put it out there for the public sphere anyway. You're not doing anybody good if you're just talking to each other. Another reason I became very disillusioned with academics because that's what a lot of people do, and a lot of them still have the mindset of just stuck in the academic circles. And to me, that does no good. History does no good unless it's being shared. And I mean shared as in the greatest possible way, as wide as possible. Again, why I do YouTube, because it can reach a lot of people very quickly. It's something I really do enjoy doing. But I also think that's what the value of history is reaching people. Ignorance is fueled in the dark, and that's what I don't like. I don't want that to be the case. So I think that's what historians can do as, an activism is just get it out there. You don't have to, be yelling in the streets or, being militant about it, or even say that that's your objective. You can just tell the stories, the work you've done, and just tell people. And I think that will be better than just sitting around talking to each other historians. It doesn't do anybody any good. Oh, yeah, and I miss Inglis. Yeah, Inglis did a huge number of production Bren guns, especially, the Bren gun girl, Veronica Foster, during the Second World War, that famous photo of her, staring over the Bren guns, having a smoke. It's a pretty iconic photo of Canada's war. Yeah, I think I talked about this already, EWS, but I do agree. So this is an interesting question. I think I got kind of answered, but at the end of the war, right, you hear tons about the Germans going west or trying to get as west as possible because they know the poor treatment that was going to be vetted out to them. I mean, a good chunk of that's their own fault. The treatment of Soviet POWs, the early 41 period after the invasion was awful. They would literally just put them the Soviet POWs in a field and let them starve to death. So they knew that the Germans knew what they had done, and they knew that the Soviets knew that. So they knew that was not going to be good. And they knew what the nature of the fighting had been like, and they knew it was going to be nasty. So they tried to get as west as possible to survive, basically. Because some POWs in Soviet captivity die, huge numbers actually die from all kinds of factors. And some are POWs for 10 years after the war ends, right? Some get sent back in 1955. So I think that really plays a role into that. Just not a love lost between those two sides. And yeah, WS, so your service, thank you for your service in Afghanistan and being in the forces. I agree with you. I mean, I 100% agree with you that civilians should show more interest in sacrifice, particularly now. I think I heard this, it was a long time ago, I think after Afghanistan started. It was an American context, but it was, and just stick with me here for a second. It was an idea of the country, because it was in the American context again, it's two countries fighting that war. You have the ones who are fighting the war, right? Veterans and, people in the forces and the American military and their families and all the people connected to them are like one bucket. And then everyone else is in this other bucket where nothing changed, right? Yeah, things like 9/11 was terrible. And I'm not denying that, but I would put those people in the other bucket, right, connected to the military and the ones who actually suffer, I guess is the way they put it, versus everybody else. And I just don't think a lot of people in that big bucket don't really understand what that means, right? They don't understand, family members being gone for extended periods of time in harm's way and things like that. So I think Canada was exactly the same. I mean, our contribution was so much smaller because of just population and military is smaller. But it's the same idea, right? Most of the things kept on ticking. Didn't change much. Economically didn't change at all. For a lot of people, vacations and everything kept going. or these people are on the front lines, and just a lot of people had no appreciation for what that even actually means. They can say thank you and all that stuff, but I think, having an empathy and understanding that is massive. And again, a lot of people know this, but one of my passions is understanding what happens after the war and making sure the veterans get their due, which I think all countries have bumbled at all times. And I don't think it's as good as it should have been. And I count Canada today as among that. Okay, so this is an interesting one. Trying to learn about Canadian units involved in Operation Olympic and Operation Coronet. Yeah, the two separate, the larger invasion of Japan, and then Coronet's the first landing. If the Japanese had not surrendered. So they were putting together a division to go as part of that, actually commanded by, I don't know if Norm is here, Bert Hoffmeister was going to be the divisional commander for that one. But it doesn't end up happening. So I don't know if a unit list had been drawn up. No, actually, I do know a unit list had been drawn up as part of that. I don't have it currently accessible. It was something I have to find because I found those files, right? Because my dissertation had to do with Canada and the Pacific, Hong Kong. That stuff, I was looking at that to understand, what impact that had, the fighting in Hong Kong on what was going on with the division they were going to send to the Pacific, and how that all connected. And there were some interesting connections. But I don't have that document handy, but I can see if I can find it. It's probably on an old hard drive somewhere. I'd have to try and dig it out, but it is in the archives. I know it is because I went through those whole files about how they were prepping the division and what everything was going to look like. I just don't remember off the top of my head, unfortunately. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. WS, I like that. Yeah, it doesn't matter too. I mean, yeah, a bullet is a bullet. An artillery shell is an artillery shell. So all this, I call it the pissing contest that goes on is I'm not a fan. Also for people today, I'm like, you weren't there. So how is this? How do you win? You know what I mean? How do you win that? Well, Omaha's worse. It's like, okay, you weren't there. Okay, same nationality as the people who were, but that doesn't give you anything. You know what I mean? That's it's weird to me. I don't understand it. It's some weird pissing contest that makes no sense to even participate in. I guess like a lot of pissing contests, hence the name. Yeah, Oscar, you're right. The invasion of mainland would have been not absolutely brutal. I mean, we don't know, but we know in a lot of ways, right? Okinawa, what that was like, because a lot of those islands would have been, large Okinawas. It would have made Okinawa look small, which is just terrifying to think about. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very nice of you to say. Oh, thanks, Phil. I'm glad you got up. Yeah, I don't even know what time it is where you guys are. I guess we missed we can still make that happen. You could do some merch. Yeah, you can do some merch with trading cards. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, so this is something, that's a good point to make. GD here. Sorry, one second. Yeah, it was voluntary basis. Excuse me. So that's why you have the story of the Uganda, right? HCMS Uganda, the ship that votes itself out of the war, because the majority of the crew says, no, we don't want to keep fighting, right? Because the war with Germany was over. And that was overarching policy by the federal government is every volunteer in the Pacific, where the Uganda was at the time, had to volunteer. The majority said no. They, after a while, up anchor, go back. Got to quit the rusty reception in Pearl Harbor, which is understandable. So they were cobbling together units. There had been units in Canada the entire war, or in North America on garrison duties that were part of these division that they were making. So some of those names may have become more famous had they taken part. But that was the plan, was to amalgamate some of those units, all that kind of stuff. Again, that document I have contains some of that. But again, I don't think there's like whether they would have put the Canadian division, probably just call it that, into the order of battle, but that would have been it, right? The orbit, like I don't think it was broken down by brigades or anything like that. I don't think we know, right? It's not like Normandy where we know because it happened, right? I don't think it got to that point. Having looked at Cornet, but that was a long time ago when I was doing my master's way back when. But yeah, I don't think it was organized in that sense. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. But in terms of that document, that's just what I remember. But again, that was also years ago now too. Well, I was in the depths of dissertation research and surrounded by documents at the archive every day for weeks on end. Oh, thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. 1 a.m. Jeez, Willie, you are dedicated. You guys are Enfield. How are you guys not tired? So S. Harris, good question. What is the state of history programs in Canada that cover military history these days, or at least where you were last in university? So I graduated technically from my PhD in 2021 in the depths of COVID. Didn't have a convocation or anything like that, which I'm not upset about. I didn't really want to go in the first place. It's kind of worked out for me. However, since then, again, this might be controversial, but some programs have changed their focus in little ways. Like Laurier, right? It used to have a military. Oh yeah, Sean. Sorry, Sean. I know. I should call you Sean. I just forget sometimes. I see the names, I get excited, and I just go. Yeah. So Sean, thank you for your question. That's a good question because I was talking about somebody, Dave Patterson, who some of you were hanging out with earlier, about this while we were doing the tour in the Netherlands. Laurier changed their focus, right? They used to be a military history center. Now they're a center of study of Canada. That's a recent change, only a couple of years. I don't think it was a good idea. It was one of the few. It was strong, very strong program, and I think it's going to now possibly disappear. The military part is still there, sort of, but I don't think it was the best idea to do that. So it's no longer even a military history center. It's a study of Canada. Those have already existed. UNMB has a somewhat strong program. It's small because, again, it's university in Canada. They're always small, relatively speaking. But now that Mark Milner is no longer part of it, I haven't heard much. I just don't know what they're doing out there, really. I know I've heard some stuff on the go. I want to do some stuff related to the Cold War, stuff going on that happened in Cyprus, that kind of thing. But I don't know too much. I haven't heard much from them because they don't seem to have much of a digital footprint, unfortunately. And then there's a program out in Calgary. Again, I haven't heard much from them recently. They do a conference every year, but I haven't heard much from them. And that's really all I know. Western used to have a strong program where I went for undergrad and my master's. They used to have quite a strong program, just people have retired or passed on. And they're not being replaced. Ottawa, where I got my PhD at Ottawa, used to have a very strong Canadian military history presence, which is now gone. Doesn't exist. People have moved on. There's hardly anybody left there now who just does that at all. I mean, there's hardly any Canadianists in that department to begin with, which is interesting because you can see Parliament Hill. You can see the Peace Tower from those offices, which to me, I know it doesn't really matter that way. But to me, it's just such an interesting thing when I was in some offices talking to some profs and they can see, the Canadian flag waving on top of Parliament Hill on the Peace Tower. And there's 3 Canadianists left in the department. It's just like, what is going on here, guys? That's weird, and that's not great, and I don't like that. But that's a whole other thing. So to me, the state is not good, and I think it's only going to get worse. I think academic military history is on the way out in Canada, unfortunately. Its biggest champions have either passed on or are retired and are now focusing on other things. You can't get a job in it. Some people have. I couldn't. I tried even in Ottawa. It didn't go well. Lots of work for no return. So I don't really want to feel like I'm bashing my head against the wall. I keep going. So I gave up, focus on other things. Also why I want to make this YouTube channel work so I can do this and get this out there. I'm trying to do my best on my own here because I'm literally by myself, right? I'm the only one doing it. So in terms of history programs in universities, it's not looking good. That's probably pessimistic, but for my opinion, I think there's going to be hardly anybody left. And we'll have to rely on outsiders again, right? Because that's how it started, right? Most of the big first name PhDs did their work in the US. Like Duke, for some reason, attracted all the Canadians. I think they still have a Canadian studies department. It could be gone. I don't know. I haven't checked in a while. But they all left the country, right? Like C.P. Stacy did his PhD at Princeton. So did Granitstein. Those are the guys that started this stuff. And it's already dying. It's been 2 generations, or not even 2, and it's already dying. I mean, I got a military history PhD in Canada. It wasn't easy. I was one of the few. I don't know, since then I haven't really kept up because I've been trying to do this whole thing and do my other jobs and everything like that. But yeah, it's not good. I don't think it's good, but I could be wrong. I haven't been connected to university in years. I don't really keep up with any academics anymore. Try to stay away from it, to be completely honest with you, for all kinds of reasons. But I'm going to Laurier this year. Actually, in a few weeks, 2 weeks, a week, something like that. 2 weeks. If any of you are going to be at the Laurier conference, I will be there talking about what I do. I'm talking about digital military history, digital Canadian military history. Literally what I do will be my panel, will be my paper topic. I'm the last slot in the last panel, which is weird. It feels really weird. I feel like they're hiding me. Maybe because of things I say on the internet. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, it's problematic. It's not good. Again, I want to keep harping on that, but it's not good. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of messes. I mean, you got the whole... I don't want to keep getting into it because I got it on Twitter with the whole culture war thing with the stupid passports. But besides that whole thing of old indoctrination, academia, blah, 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 I don't believe in that because it's not true, because universities can barely get their budgets paid, let alone indoctrinating anyone. There's all other kinds of messes. There's all these internal fights. There's all this stupid stuff. It's all the wrong focus. People fighting with each other when they should be working together, because otherwise it's just going to die. And it is dying. And they're fighting over scraps of a dying thing. And it's just quite sad. Well, thank you, Pete. Isn't that nice of you? I mean, I've heard teachers using some of the stuff. I had an old buddy of mine's a teacher, and he ran to our old history teacher. And he says he uses it in the classroom, so that's kind of cool. I don't know if anybody else is doing it, but it's pretty cool. And I mean, the school year is wrapping up, so maybe they can put it on. Yeah, you're right, Pat. It's just another pissing contest. And it's just done in academia. Highly educated people doing it over nothing, for no reason, fighting with each other. And it's just something I didn't want to be a part of. It's not like they let me be a part of it anyway, but I didn't want to fight to get in just for the whole thing to come collapsing down on my head. Say if I got a job within, in a year, it's done anyway, because they're just slashing to the bone. So it's just something I didn't want to get involved in when I could be working on other things, public outreach, working with other organizations that are doing the daily grind. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that's what it's going to take. Like working with people who are forward thinking in terms of technology and digital output and things like that. That's where the future is going to be. And I'm trying to get in there while it's, still in its infancy. Relatively speaking, for history, history's slow. Shocking. History can be a bit slow. Yeah, so it's not good. I mean, other countries it seems better, but again, I can't speak to them well. I mean, there's a lot of great American programs out there that are still really, really popular and doing really, really well. Britain has a good chunk of them, which is awesome. Again, that's just the English-speaking world that I'm aware of. There's stuff in Australia. I mean, they've got a better presence in terms of their national museum too, so that helps. Again, it's not that it's War Museum's fault here. They only have so much to do, but it's just different. And again, this is just a Canadian problem where we don't put enough emphasis on it. We don't put enough support in it, and frankly, we don't spend enough money. We're scared to spend money on anything in this country. Even if it brings our country down, we won't spend money. This is a really good question, actually. So AI, artificial intelligence, right? I'm a YouTuber. I don't think I've ever said that out loud. The big discussion across YouTube right now is AI. ChatGPT is, writing scripts and getting ideas and generating, like people will literally be like, I'm in New York. ChatGPT, what should I do today? And then they'll just make a video of ChatGPT's list. AI is doing narration now. People say they can't tell the difference. You can tell the difference if you listen. It's weird. It's like, I was saying this to my wife the other day. It's the analogy, right? Like, it's like on a robot looks human, but you know it's not human, and it makes you uncomfortable. I don't know. I think there's an evolutionary thing in there somewhere. The voice is the same to me. It's uncomfortable. It's not right, but it's almost right, but it's not enough. And I'm like, this is robot talking. I don't like it. Aside from that, AI is a huge topic right now across digital spaces, YouTube especially. So I'm thinking about this. And again, I don't know too much. I haven't done too much into it. I don't know the academic impact on it. I've heard a little bit about, people trying to write essays through ChatGPT. Get caught instantly because it's not very good yet. I mean, the AI is not where it can be or where people say it's going to go. So in terms of an impact on history education, I had some friends of mine just try to, a little bit of elbow in the ribs kind of thing, being like, oh, look what AI can do. And they would tell the AI, tell me about the Battle of whatever. And it would do that. And then I would read it and go, yeah, that's almost right. I mean, I know that, I know that that's wrong. Right. So I don't know yet. I think it's new. It's still kind of a shiny thing to play with. I don't know if it's going to last. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, TV, that'll never last. Internet, that's a fad. I don't think it's going to be like, I'm not saying it like that. I don't know. We're still so early. I mean, I use it a little bit in my own work, but hardly anything at all. Like I use it for things like title generation, because it can, go through. I mean, it's a service I pay for. Luckily, again, thank you to the patrons for helping me get that. That is put together by a company called VidIQ, where they have gone through this and set up an AI to go through the YouTube to help you get the most effective titles. Right, I use it for that. It helps with descriptions, things like that. It helps with that, so it helps in that way. But in terms of education, I don't know. I think like it'll help with writing a little bit. It might just cut down some of the needless things, like having to type out D-Day was June 6, 1944. Like that'll be helpful, because then you can add your own thing into it. You can edit it, move it around, things like that. Maybe with the narration, I'm not a big fan of it. I prefer human voice. If you think it's a bad voice, whatever, I still prefer human voice, and because I prefer the authenticity. It's history. It's a human story. It's not a robot story. It's human stories. That's why I do what I do. Is the human interaction. Take it all out, then to me that's no good. But that's me, and obviously I'm biased as running a YouTube channel that I'm trying to make successful. However, you know what I mean. I don't know yet. I think it's going to be an interesting way of collating and getting all this stuff like with images. I think it'll be very helpful. I think that'll help. Databasing and searching the internet. I mean, it's not perfect by any means. Is it going to replace historians? No, I don't think it will ever. And whatever historian form that means moving forward, right? Does historians become something that's done digitally? Do historians just write full-length books anymore? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, right? I'm a trained historian in the academic sense, but all that fun stuff, you know what I mean? What's that going to look like in 20 years? I don't know. And I think it's way too early. But for those who use it, it is helpful in and of itself in a lot of ways. Yeah, like History Explorer here is talking about things like trends. Like that's another thing I use the AI for the VidIQ that I use for YouTube, trying to get my videos to get more views kind of thing. It's the same idea. Like they can look at trends, they see what's doing well, and then just the AI does it. It just constantly updates once a day kind of thing. I don't have to do any of that. I don't have to go looking. I mean, I still do sometimes just to see what's going on out there because I'm just trying to learn. Also, the history parts I'm trying to learn, right? How to make all that stuff. But I do see it's going to have a place. And then AI exactly for search optimization and for titles exactly. But that's the way YouTube is changing in and of itself again with their own AI and making, SOE sort of important again, but not really. I don't know. I don't quite understand it yet because I don't think YouTube has figured it out yet. They keep changing how they're doing things. But yeah. But again, you can always help the channel just by liking and commenting and subscribing if you haven't done yet. That would be much appreciated. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the robot voices. It freaks me out, and it's just not necessary. Microphones are dirt cheap now. You can get a good one for nothing. I don't know why that's better. I know people have anxiety and stuff like that, but still have to talk to each other. Yeah, the uncanny valley. It's yeah, it creeps me out. I don't know. Maybe it just makes me sound old, but it just kind of creeps me out. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's that too, where you get prompts and it can help you. It can help you. I'm not disparaging it by any means, but I think it's a new frontier, a new frontier. It's just, to me, so new, and I'm trying to keep up with it. And there's just so many new tools, and they come out for free, and they're in a beta, and then they're gone, and they're behind a paywall, so I don't get to look at them again. And yeah, I don't have tons of money to spend on these things. Things I try to spend the money on are things that are going to help the channel continue on, move forward. That's where I spend that money. So I mean, things like that, I don't get a chance to look at too much. And again, I'm just busy generally, so it's more difficult that way for me to keep up. But there's just a ton going on. And good night. Thanks for coming up. Appreciate you guys staying up. Yeah, it's late for you guys now. Geez, 1 a.m. ish. Have a good night. Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's going to be bad. It's just, it's not my favorite. I don't prefer it. So, Pete, yeah, the Aquino weekend. I've never been. Hear good things. Maybe I might be able to make it. I don't know yet. I'm not sure. I'm on a contract, right? I said that at the beginning, for those who weren't here at the beginning. Sorry. Sorry, I got distracted. Yeah, my contract is ending before that, but it might be extended. I don't know. So I don't know if that's going to play with my schedule. So I might be able to come. I'd love to be able to come. And if people are going to be there, that would be cool to hang out. And just, I love seeing the armor. So that would be awesome. So I'm going to, if I do go, I'll let people know. But I got to see what's going on with my work situation. Hopefully that gets cleared up soon, because that would be stupendous. Oh, I didn't know he did that. Okay. I didn't know he had an AI robot voice. He's got a good voice. So he's got that British accent. I mean, sorry, English accent. It helps. Sounds so sophisticated. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know too much about his channel. I was actually talking to Woody from World War II TDV today, and how we just both admire what he's been able to do. He's got that secret sauce. I don't know, whatever it is. That channel is fantastic. And the things he can do, and the details, and it's crazy to me how well that channel has done. It's not like he doesn't deserve it either. It's well deserved. It's just, wish I could get on some of that, you know. Okay, so I do want to touch on this really, really quickly. Okay, see, I disagree with this, because it's not fitting their own agenda, right? That's not true. That's not what's going on. That's not the stuff I was talking about. I'm talking about like the infighting of like what type of, history should be done in a department. I'm not talking about like, oh, we were going to try and, indoctrinate them, and right versus left. It's not like that. It's just not. And no one's trying to fit an agenda with an academic department. I taught a course. It was a short term. It was in the spring semester, so it's already condensed. My biggest concern was getting the students to read a damn syllabus, not believe my political views. If I can't get them reading the goddamn article that's 10 pages, how am I going to get them to, understand my politics and make them do the things I want for the rest of their lives? These are teenagers and people in their early 20s. We're not in here. We weren't trying to do these things to, I want them to vote for leftist communists only. Like, that's not what's going on. We're like, we want you to read the damn syllabus. Like, it's not what's going on in universities at all. Like, they're fighting with themselves. They're not trying to do any of this stuff. I don't believe that, because I've seen it and I know it's not true. It's not how that's going. Again, it's been a couple of years, but it's not literally about that. I think my supervisor of my dissertation defense, because there was 5 of us on there, 5 of us, the committee, well, 6. He said, whatever it was, you can have 5 historians in a room and have 7 different opinions. If you think it's homogenous, it's not. It's not even close to homogenous. You can't even agree on what's the best book on anything, or the best citation style, let alone any of that stuff. But that's just my opinion. Again, you can have yours, and I'm not trying to change yours, but I don't think it's the obvious thing that that's what's going on here. It's a reshaping of history. That's not what's happening, not even remotely at all. Yeah, I mean, I do want to see. I just want to see the vehicles, right? I mean, the War Museum did a thing last year. I have some videos up on the channel of what they call it, the fighting machines. They brought out what could run. Yeah, and it was great just to see them moving. I love seeing them get to move, right? Because they're usually static museum pieces. especially in this country with our 5 months of winter. No one's dragging out their very expensive armored car in the middle of February in Canada. It's not happening. Maybe in the lower mainland of British Columbia and on the island. Not here, not in Ottawa. So you know what I mean? So it's great to see that. And this is in the GTA in Oshawa. So that's awesome. Also, it was a production center for armor in the Second World War. So anyway, yeah, so that's it. Is there more questions? If I missed anything, please let me know. Oh, yeah. It's exactly this, kind of going back to the academic thing real quick. But I end up as starving posts. The postdocs are not great. Sessional's even worse. And then they just give up years later and do something else. That's why I kind of wanted to do this. This is why I do this, right? Because I can still do it in a way. And I prefer it anyways. I got to learn it. I love doing it this way anyway, because I get different opinions and I get to talk to different people, and it's not always the same old, same old. It's not just, disinterested 19-year-olds who are only there to get a degree because their parents told them to. These are people, you guys are here because you want to be, and that's great. So that is an excellent question. Excuse me, still the allergies are kicking in. Sorry, 1 second. I haven't talked to Angela in a while. I'll come back to you, Crojo, in a second. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your support. You are amazing, amazing person. Thank you. And thank you for watching. You're great. So are the rest of you. But I haven't seen Angela in a while just because I've been busy. And you are awesome. Yes. Okay, back to this question. Dan Snow is planning a D-Day tour. I assume for next year. Was it this year? I assume it's next year because it's coming up. Have you ever thought about doing something like this? Yes, I have. Anything more than the thought? No, because I know how much work goes into it, how difficult it is. Because I just got back from a tour. Right, I was in the Netherlands with a group with Dave Patterson and his company. He had this thing that had been going on. Wait, what? Sorry. They do a winter warfare event. Yeah, but it's GTA. That's not the same. Do it up here. You guys don't even get snow in the GTA anymore. What was I talking about? Tours. Yes. So I just got back from one Dave Patterson. We were in the Netherlands doing Market Garden, which is a whole thing now. It's kind of souring me on Market Garden a little bit. Not the tour, everything else. And Operations Veritable, Blockbuster, and into Germany. And then other commemorative things. And anyway, I know it's a ton of work. It takes forever. The tour that I was part of had been planned for years because it was pushed back because of COVID. But then again, the rest of the planning took like a year or something. So it takes forever to get those put together. So I'd have to do it like now. Like I'd have to set it up now. And I just don't know if I have enough of a following to do something like that. I'd love to be able to do a tour, take people somewhere, anywhere really, and just get the chance to interact and do what we love, right, with this history stuff. It would be amazing. Excuse me, the allergies are fighting back on me here. Being able to do that, it would be something great. I don't have experience in setting any of that up. Been on a few, led that one. The leading was an amazing experience. I love doing it. I love talking about the events on the ground themselves. I mean, I pulled up, I had a clip from on Twitter from A Bridge Too Far, pulled it up on Arnhem Bridge. I mean, it's not the original bridge. Also, the movie wasn't filmed in Arnhem. Well, that scene wasn't filmed in Arnhem. Of saying we can't accept your surrender. It was so cool to be able to do that. I mean, that was a cool experience for me. I pulled it up for people on the tour. We're talking about it, the movie, because we were at the John Frost Bridge looking at the plaque. The technology of today, to me, that's like my ultimate, nerd history, digital history nerdness ultimate. So I would love to do it. I don't know how to even begin doing that. I'd have to get involved with somebody or a company and see if there's interest for that. But I don't know if I have enough of a following to be able to do that. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm pretty small. I'm a pretty small channel. I'm only 6,000 some subscribers. It's not a lot. It's not a big base. Other ones have huge bases. I don't have that. I don't have the money resources aside yet to do anything like that. So maybe something in the future. I would love to do that. I am hoping to get over there next year to France and into Netherlands and Belgium again. But we'll see. I want to, but we'll see. It's a money thing. It's always a money thing with me. I have tons of debt, so from my schooling, unfortunately, that I have to focus on. But I'd love to get back over there because my trip in the Netherlands, I already have that. Sorry, the children are screaming outside. Late Saturday night fights going on out there. I just don't want to close my window because it's too nice. You get that travel bug in you, right? Again, I've always had it, but it goes dormant because of COVID and things like that. So I'd love to do it, but a tour would be amazing. I'd love to set it up and set the itinerary and set the core of what it's going to be, and pick the locales and hit the stories that I want to hit and everything like that. It would be fantastic, but that would be something that would take a lot of work. Oh, yeah, thanks for coming out. Sorry, I wasn't trying to jump on you with the thing about the university. It's just my experience only. But thank you for coming out, and thank you for your kind comment. I appreciate it. Yes, so yeah, I was in the Market Garden area. I stayed in Nijmegen. I guess I can talk about that now if you guys are okay with that, unless there's anything else. I was great. I love the area. Stayed in Nijmegen, right by the train station there. It's a great hotel. Great locale, easy to get to everything, especially the Canadian sites, right? Like with Groesbeck and all that stuff. And the windmill, the Blackburn windmill. Oh, I don't have the book. That's a cool site to go to. Just outside in Groesbeck there, up in the heights. That's 82nd Airborne Territory as well. All that stuff. It's great. Yeah, so it was a great area. I loved it. Didn't go to Eindhoven. Went to Arnhem quite a few times. Actually drove through Arnhem a bunch of times. So up to the bridge. That was cool. The countryside is beautiful. A lot of people though. Just got a lot of people. Netherlands is jam-packed. I don't have to tell you guys that, but there's a lot of people everywhere, right? The bike paths, gazelles are everywhere. You think like in the rural areas, they're not there. They're there. And it's kind of cool. I get it. And it's great. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool country. I loved it. The people were great. I think, that was one of the questions I was going to talk about, actually. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, how were the Dutch? From Luke Fitzgerald, one of my patrons. Yeah, it's just, I thought that was funny, just the way he asked that. I'm like, very nice. But Amsterdam's not my favorite city, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't like Amsterdam all that much. Too much going on for my liking when the rest of it was so chill. Got back to Nijmegen, and it just seemed dead in comparison, even though it was a busy Saturday night for Nijmegen. Because Amsterdam is just, the place is crazy with the bikes. My goodness. They are everywhere and they don't care. You are in their way and they'll run you over. Not a big fan. Everywhere else, great stuff. Went to all kinds of places, like was in Ada for a little bit from the other trip, and I did a little recce beforehand, and it's small, but it's got some cool little spots. Arnhem's just a cool town on its own with, it was a resort, it was a holiday destination before the war, right? That's why it, the fighting kind of developed the way it did, right? And the way it looked like that is because all those big vacation houses, right, for hotels. And those are still there, which is cool. Lots of room to move around, and you get to see it from the landing zones, just wide open spaces. And it's very Canada. I keep saying that to people because where I grew up in Southern Ontario, right? You have the Canadian joke of the prairies being flat, which they are. But Southern Ontario is also extremely flat. Something that people don't really discuss of how flat southwestern Ontario actually is. Like the strip from London to Windsor, I'm sorry, it's the most boring drive in the country. It's not even, the prairies is not even as boring. It's like a 2.5 hour drive as it feels like 6. It's so boring. But I was like, at least there's the forests and things like that. And that's what the Netherlands reminded me of. But the drives aren't as long, right? That's why I kept saying to people, it reminded me of home, because people are so hospitable. And the thing I noticed the first time we were doing the recce, because we were meeting with museum folks and historians and having dinners and hanging out with people, is the hospitality. You guys are amazing. You guys love giving coffee to guests, and I'm into it. Loved it. You walk into a place, you could be lying your face off, and they'll be like, "Do you want some coffee?" The museums, they would just make us coffee. They would just stop whatever it is they're doing in the middle of their workday and invite us in and give you cake and cookies and coffee and chat your ear off, or let you chat their ear off, or show you their museum. And it was great, and I loved it. And so many great experiences, and people are so kind and so nice and will help you when they can. And it was a really great experience, and I really, really enjoyed it. So definitely now one of my favorite places to go. Amsterdam, not so much. And Schiphol Airport's very nice, but I'll take other parts. And I didn't get into the Walcheren Island, unfortunately. I didn't get to do the shelled, which is another bucket list item for me, and that's something I'd love to be able to do in the future. Yes, I know I'm relatively young, but again, I got so many factors to worry about. So that's my microphone. Factors to consider, bills and such, stupid money. You know what I mean? Why I'm worried. I am worried about that. I'll talk about that now. Why I started off the show is that money does concern me, and putting in work and everything like that. It's an issue. I'm not going to lie, and it's a consideration. Also, not going to lie for what I do and how I do it. This stuff takes a ton of work. The videos, like I got one I was working on last night late, and it just takes tons of time and effort, and it's difficult. I'm not gonna lie. So it's just something I have to keep in mind. I do have lots of time, but it's just in the short term I don't have too much time, because if I can't make money, I can't live, right? I can't do that. So hopefully things do get better. I would like that, and hopefully things continue on with the channel and things get better for me. I would make things a lot easier for me. So yes, will you be taking events such as Aquino or Tank Fest this year? I would talk about Aquino earlier. Maybe I'll see. I'll see if I can, because it's coming up. I'm just not sure if it's going to fit my schedule, because I'm just balancing possibly the end of a contract. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to end. I don't know if it's going to get extended, and if that's going to play into my planning, because I don't live near there. I'm not in the GTA. I'm in Ottawa, so it's not easy to get down there. I just did that train. It's not fun. Don't like doing it. If I don't have to, and I'm going to be doing it again soon, because I'm going down to Waterloo for the annual conference there, and it's just not cheap anymore either. Train from Ottawa to Toronto is $150 now, and that's the cheapest one you can get, and it's awful. It's so expensive. So expensive. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I will let people know if I am planning something like that. I'll see how things go for myself. We'll see. Oh, that's cool, Pete. I didn't know you may have told me about that. I don't remember. Sorry. You sent me some naval stuff recently, but I don't know if I knew about that. But yeah, I did a walk around Nijmegen actually with Dave and the group. We mapped out the 2 core headquarters in the west of Nijmegen. I forget the name of the little town. It's like a neighborhood now. Anyway, that was cool just to walk around, take it all in, try to picture what it was like at the time. And because that part of town, part of the country was obviously right next to Nijmegen, but hadn't really been hit by the fighting, right? Because the fighting took place around the bridge and the river crossing and all that area. And there was the earlier bombing of Nijmegen. All that kind of stuff. So go to see that, and some of it survives, right? Because a good chunk of Nijmegen was flattened, right? So that old architecture is gone. Same with Arnhem, it's all gone. You don't quite get the same sense. But some of those older parts on the outskirts, that was cool to do. So maybe that's where it was probably taken closer to the bridge, because that was the front line for a good chunk of time. But yeah, it's a really cool place. So also with Nijmegen, because of the whole 82nd thing, right? With the Nijmegen March, you just don't know what that is there's a bridge, and I'm not talking about the big one with the packs and the whole march of 3 days and killing yourself. The bridge march, there's a new bridge that was put in, well, newish, about 10 years. It's 10 years old now, roughly. Further down the river, so it's actually where the crossing of the 82nd Airborne, that famous scene in Bridge Too Far, Robert Redford paddling across the wall. There's a bridge there now. And every night, it's just kind of like every night there's a march. They have a veteran that you have to sign up. It's usually very booked up well ahead of time. And they will lead the march. And as they march along, the lights on the bridge turn on as they march forward. And I was in the back because they were all military, and I wasn't, so I was just watching, taking it all in. Anyway, some of them were in uniform, so I just kind of let them do their thing. But anyway, it was cool to see and take that in, and have that time to think about it and what happened at that spot. And then you go around, and then the ceremony stops at the memorial for the 82nd in the area, and all about the fighting that they did around Nijmegen and everything. So I really appreciated that. That ability to do that and see how Nijmegen's progressed and how the city's grown, and yeah, it's great, and I really enjoyed that. So Nijmegen's a really cool city. I really liked it. Lots going on, crazy place. I didn't do the bar thing. Too old for that, for sure. Some people were out till like 3:30, 4 in the morning, and I'm just like, oh God, that sounds exhausting. Yeah, it's yeah. Unfortunately, no, the links don't work in the chat. No, they don't, unfortunately. They don't get blocked. That's a YouTube thing. That's not a me thing. Yeah, so unfortunately, no. Oh, thanks, B. Yeah, you got my email, so. Yeah. I got to find where it is first. And Judith. Oh, thank you for watching, Judith. I appreciate it. Appreciate you saying that, and the support you've given the channel as well. It means a lot to me. Thank you. And I will do that can loan stuff. I'm not forgetting. And sorry, I don't respond to the emails like I should. It's just since I got back, it's been crazy busy, trying to literally keep my head above water at this point. This is why I want to do a live stream now, because I don't know when I can do another one again. Other than the ones with guests. I don't know if I can do an AMA again until probably late June at the earliest, if then. So I want to do it tonight. So anyway, that aside, thank you. And I will get on that because I want to do that justice. I want to do can loan justice. And I think the things you've given me will let me do that. So I'm taking my time. Oh, yeah, maybe GD. Maybe I can. I don't know. Yeah, well, I can post it somewhere else. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff going on in that area. For Market Garden, for After. I mean, even today, it was like music festival crazy. It was so much going on. It was crazy. Yeah. So, oh yeah, Audio Intelligence again. Thank you, another YouTube channel member. Again, thank you for your support. I appreciate it. On your variable trip, did you visit Gotch? No, not that. Well, we went through it, but in this tour, it was like a coach bus, right? I had a coach bus, Dave had the other coach bus. And then we would, go places and try not to run into each other literally sometimes because these buses are big and these towns are not. So it's squished. So we didn't really go into Gotch. We did. We just drove through it. But we did do the Gotch Kalkar Road. We stopped on the side of the road in between where these farm buildings, where the advance at the end of Veritable ends and where Blockbuster starts is the Gotch Kalkar Road. I don't know why I'm doing this from the tour. I was like, it's over here, and then that's over there, and this is where they are. So we did that. So breaking it down that way and trying to show the expanse and how things have variable moved and all of that stuff. So it was great, but didn't go into that town. The only town we really went into was Luth, because we found a place to put the bus. And because it has such a tense story with the flooding from the Rhine and the Chaudière having to literally get rescued by the buffaloes coming up to the houses, right? There's photos of them sticking out the second floor window, jump into the buffalo to get out because the flooding literally comes into town. You can see it in the war diary. We're like, oh, the water's getting kind of high. Maybe we should get out of here. And then they get trapped. So they get rescued. So yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, so we did do that. We covered that. It was great. Got to talk about that and telling current soldiers what it's like for an armor attack because they got hit by a panzer division, right? They got overrun in ways, and companies got cut off. So that was cool to do. So that was an area we definitely hit up. So, and then yes, GD Hawkweld. Yes, we did the Hawkweld as well, which was very cool. I mean, the Reichswald is first. I did a video right on the Hawkwald gap. That's on the channel. That photo, I took that photo because that rail line that became the main supply route was a rail line at the time. It's not anymore. It's a walking path. You can actually walk all the way up and into the gap and up and over into these forest trails. And there's actually a restaurant right there. It's very nice area. Very cool. It was busy because it was a holiday. It was like it was May Day, 1st of May. So it was day off. It's like Labor Day for us, right? North America. The place was hopping. People everywhere. Everyone was out hiking and biking and lots of horses in the area. People take their horses. Go for a horseback ride. It was great. It was a great place. Got to talk about that battle and explain what happened and the difficult conditions and all of that stuff. Covered it all. I mean, described it as like Hansel and Gretel territory, almost in a sense, because it kind of is, right? That dark, thick forest. I mean, it's been cleared a little bit. They've peeled it back in some places, planted in others, different than it was at the time. But it was really cool to do and experience to take in, and the Reichswald. And again, we're the bus driver and people there are like, excuse me, by Canadian standards, the Reichswald's not that big. Because we just have expanses of force that's just going forever. But for European standards, the Reichswald is massive, right? This is just huge. And then you have the Hubbell further back in and all that stuff. So did all that and got to go there twice because we did the recce, and then went and took the group, and they really appreciated it because giving them a sense of what it's like, of what's going on there and all the difficulties that they had and trying to cover all of that and all the different fighting and everything. It was a cool place to be, but it's also great to see again people using it and freely using it, and what all this fighting was for a purpose, and that's great to see. And it's that part of Europe is very active. Makes me feel bad about yourself when you're not as active as them, biking and hiking and all of that going on. But yeah, it was very cool to see all of that. I went to Gotch, and then Xanten was kind of the end, because that's the end of the advance, right, up to the Rhine, because then you have Operation Plunder, which has a Canadian element, with the Highland Brigade, which is attached to the Highland Division, crosses part of Plunder, and then you have the 1st Parachute Battalion and jumps in Varsity. So that's kind of where we stopped, was following literally the path of Veritable and Blockbuster up into the Rhine. And then we had to stop there because there was other events and things we had to do. But yeah, it was mostly cover that. Yeah. So yes. Oh, well, yeah, Kevin, I believe your tour was SIGs focused. Well, it was signalers, current signalers in the association. How did that aspect supplement your understanding of those ops? It's a good point. So that's a really cool point. I was talking about that earlier with the walking around doing the 2 Corps headquarters, seeing literally where it was, because a good chunk of that town has not changed. There's a ton of that going on there. So anyway, that's why we did it. It was like, well, how would you do it? If you had to be the, the signaler, and you had to set all this up, Simmons says, I want a headquarters, wire everything up. What would you do? We did that. However, for the rest of it, I tried to keep it focused on what I knew. So obviously, signals is a very technical aspect, and I don't claim to be a technical expert. But a lot of these people don't have that in-depth or even surface level knowledge of what Canada A did in the war, but what they were doing in places like Hochwald, or what was going on in the Reichswald, or any of that. Trying to cover all of that. I was trying to cover the basics and like what things were like, and trying to give them a sense of what it's like to have a battalion, moving across behind a barrage and all of that. So it didn't play too much into it. I mean, people were asking questions afterwards and things like that, but they were really interested in, what's the experience of like, in that situation, because like we could be in that situation, right? We could be in combat. These are serving military people. These are serving army people, like 90% of them. So they wanted to know about that and what I had to, what I had learned and what I had come across and things like that. So the SIGs comes up a little bit, but it was a signaler group. But I tried to cover it as much as possible. Like we went to the Dutch Signals Museum. Like that's where that came in. And they know their stuff way more than me. I mean, the technical elements of that stuff is just over my, history head. But it was really cool to get to do that and bring it in when I could, right? Talking about like simple things like you would think like radios and stuff like that. That played a part. It got talked about at Arnhem, right? With 1st Airborne and, the supposed problems with the wireless and all that stuff. So, yeah. Sorry, I just want to go back. Yeah, so it's Traces of War. Yeah, so yeah, it's a good website. I use that a little bit myself. There's lots going on there, and they break it down. I use that a little bit for my prep. Yes, OP, yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, if they have a Camlone one, that would be amazing, Pete, if you could. There's just not a huge number of them, right? There's only a couple hundred. Yes, distances are smaller, but doesn't mean it's easier to get around. It's not like there's highways. I mean, the Autobahn, that's an experience. Oh, geez. That was a bit eye-opening. First time being on that. That was kind of cool. But yeah, it's just not easy to get around, especially if you get lost. You don't want to get lost. You might not get back, especially on a coach bus. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Susan, you're right. They have a ton of amazing museums like at Osterbeek, with the Airborne Museum. It's literally called at Hartenstein, the Airborne Museum at Hartenstein. Like that was the HQ, right, of First Airborne as the perimeter started to shrink, right. That was cool. That was great. They have an experience. I put it up short on the channel actually because that's the most I can get because I was touring and working and taking people around. So I was only getting a short one, but they tried to recreate as best as possible, given the circumstance, literally space. They built a space for this, of moving through the Battle of Arnhem. Like you get into a glider and they like it moves, like it's bumpy, like I'm bumping up and down. It's bumpy and things like that, and that was cool. And then the door opens and they're like, get out, go, 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 go. And yeah, you move through the city at night, and then you go to all that, and you see the anti-aircraft fire, and you move through houses, and you can hear civilians in behind, and things like that. And yeah, and then you get to the river with Operation Berlin to get out and everything, and it was great. They have an audio tour. It was pretty cool. I guess the people on the tour loved that part. They loved the museum. Great, it was great. I highly suggest anyone go to that. What else we do? We did the Signals Museum. That was cool, especially going with traveling, with active signalers. Just didn't have as much time as they would have liked, but you're on schedule with the tour. What else did we do? That was it really. And then people did stuff in Amsterdam. I went to the Resistance Museum in Amsterdam. Posted some stuff for my patrons. Some stuff I saw there and kind of trying to explain a little bit about that museum. And Susan, I know you said you've been there, and it was really cool. I like how they explain the story. It's complicated, it's murky, it's unclean. Holocaust comes into play, and they didn't shy away from anything in there. They weren't trying to gloss over anything. Yeah, it was a really cool one. All the other museums are way too busy. Can't even get in. Like Van Gogh Museum, you can't even get in unless you book like a month in advance, maybe more. And Frank House, you can't get in unless you same thing. You have to book forever in advance, and you won't get in. Yeah, there's other ones. There was like a maritime one. I just ran out of time. I was just kind of wandering around by myself. It was kind of nice in a weird way, and then I kind of got tired of being almost run over by bikes. That was a big takeaway for me, is getting run over by bikes. Not a fan. I don't like getting run over by any vehicle. So probably why. Anyway, yeah, there's tons of stuff going on there. I don't think I went into the other museums. Could be misremembering. Just because we were a big group, right? So it's hard to get people moving around. But anyway, yeah, like these museums, like the Resistance Museum was actually quite busy. So that was good to see. I enjoyed seeing that. How many people were in there and learning and using the audio guide and taking it all in. It was a cool place. Yeah, bicycle or motorcycle. Yes, mostly bicycles. Like scooters sometimes. Not really motorcycles because those are supposed to be on the road. But the electric scooters use the bike paths. It's like you friggin' die because you hear them coming and then they're on you. But also you don't hear the bikes coming sometimes, so they're right on you. Oh yeah, it's mostly pedal bikes. Yeah, bicycles. We call them in the English-speaking world. But so many, and they come in like packs in Amsterdam. I don't know what that's all about. Trying to cross the road is like a freaking nightmare. Just gonna get run over by a stampede of bikes. Anyway, I'll stop complaining about that. But yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I mean, Nijmegen was nice. Like I said, we didn't get to Eindhoven, unfortunately. Arnhem is cool. Going to Oosterbeek is really nice. It's a really nice area. I really liked it. Went to the National Museum in the recce part of the trip. So in late March, went there. So that was cool. It's massive. Like it's a massive thing, and just didn't go back there the second time. But went there, and it's got tons of stuff. So if that is what you're into from all 8 time periods, right, from prehistory right through today, tons of vehicles. If that's what you want to see, tons there if you're in the area. But yeah, it's a lot. I don't know what the crypto museum. There's a crypto museum, like cryptocurrency. Okay, didn't go there. That's what it is. Yeah, it was cool. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, like places do that, right? They do like a last minute release. Oh, I didn't know that. Maybe that's gone. I don't know. I didn't look because we were gonna get in too late anyway. Because I had to go with the bus that we had. So yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, that's true, Pete. You don't have to book months in advance in this country. Canada especially, definitely not. Just got to make sure the place is bloody open. That's the problem. Sometimes the place just isn't open. That's more of the issue instead of getting in. Is the place is literally locked. Yeah, 2019. Yeah, I don't know if they do that still. I didn't look very closely because I heard it was booked up, and Dave's on top of his stuff, so I didn't even bother. But people did check when they got there, like just walk by and they're like, yeah, it was booked until, oh God, what'd they say? July? Like it was full up until July or something. And I'm like, Jesus. Okay, that sucks. And apparently it's a rushed experience and you don't get to see much and you don't get to take time to take it all in, and it just didn't sound great. But there's a Jewish museum too, which apparently is easy to get into. It was just, I didn't want to go too far out of town because I had to stay around the area just in case there was an issue. But I would have liked to go and see that. That would have been cool. Maybe if I do go back to that chunk of the Netherlands, but I do want to go to the Shell next. Yeah, no, like crypto. No, I didn't go to that one. No, I didn't even know that was a thing. Or did I? I don't know. I don't remember. So crypto, I couldn't find it. It disappeared. It was so hidden. It was such an enigma. I couldn't even see it. No. Yeah, I didn't get up to Overloon. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, that is the one. Yeah, it is massive. Like, oh my God, it's massive. I was only there for a very short period, though. I didn't get much time to look around because we're just doing a recce, right? So it's bang, 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 bang. But yeah, it is huge, massive. Yeah. So Kevin, yeah, new, yeah. So I was the guide, yeah. So Dave had one bus, I had the other. So I was like charging my people, charging his people. Dave was doing the overall thing and trying to manage another tour at the same time. And Dave's a rock star when it comes to tours. I don't know how he does this stuff without going crazy. I guess it's that army training that keeps him calm. Yeah, so it was new. I'd never done it before. Pretty new, never anything that scale. I've done little things for small groups, but nothing on the battlefield and in that size and organizing, people on a bus and trying to get the attention of 30 plus people at the same time. And especially at the beginning, right? Because they don't know you, you don't know them, you don't know how it's going to go. But it was great. I love doing it. I'd love to do more. Love to tour more tour guides again. I'd love to take people places. I really enjoyed it. I loved sharing what I knew with people who were interested, going to the ground and showing people why the ground matters. To me, that was a massive part of the experience, is showing the ground itself and why that actually matters. Like going to places like, going to like Grossbeck, right? And looking at the geography, right? It's flat, 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 flat until it's not, until you're up there, right? It doesn't seem much by other standards, but in the Netherlands, it's friggin', Himalayas. Those heights make such a difference, and you can understand why things were done certain ways, and why, I don't want to get the whole market garden thing, but why take that high ground, why it could have been so important, because it's the high ground. There's no other high ground. It doesn't exist. That is the high ground. A chunk of the country is literally under the sea level, right? So it's a massive dominating feature, and then looks into Germany where the advance was going. So it was great to tell people this and be like, sometimes in this it's hard to explain. When you're there, you're like, look, standing at the Blackburn windmill and be like, okay, well, it's over here, and then this is why you can see here, because we're going to go there, or you can see it from here, or then we get to the spot and Luth, and you can look back and be like, there's the heights, that's why this matters. So this is all flooded in from the river that's right there. That was amazing. It was great to do that. I loved it. It's got a little stress when you're trying to get everything together and stuff goes wrong. The bus driver takes a turn that you're not sure why he did that, or, schedules get behind, or flights don't come in when they're supposed to come in, or something gets screwed up with a room, and there's all that kind of stuff that you just kind of go with the punches. But that's any kind of thing. But I enjoyed it. I love doing it. I love sharing my knowledge and taking in from other people and hearing their stories and taking other, opinions into account and getting, their experiences. Some of them are quite young in the Army, careers ahead of them, and what they thought was valuable, what they took away from what I was telling them was great. I really enjoyed doing that and hope to get to do it again. But yeah, I obviously love the battlefields ever since I did my first battlefield tour. I'm been addicted and want to do as many as I can. It's just it's difficult and expensive, right? If you just want to do them, you got to get paid to do them. If you want to do them like that, then it's got all the stuff you got to do, like literally count people on the bus, being like, "Do we have everybody on the bus?" After a while, I didn't do that because they're in the army; they can figure it out. They're adults. Anyway, that's that trip alone. But yeah, so that's cool. Oh, okay. Where was that, Sheila? Yeah, we went there. Yeah, we went to the museum. It's on the cavalry base, next to the cavalry museum. Well, parts of the cavalry museum. It was in the barracks, the signals base, but then they moved it. It's the whole money thing. Yeah, yeah. It was cool. There's a lot going on there. Again, I don't understand most of it, but there's a lot going on in there. They got tech from literally like when they put I don't even know what to call it, like cloth on a tower and use that to signal letters. Yeah, really cool. Sorry, I'm just making sure. Oh yeah, mountain bike. Yeah, the mountain bike. It's one part. I think it's north of Arnhem, that forested part north of Arnhem, when it's kind of working into the Osterbeck Highlands, the hills there. You know, if you know what I'm talking about. I saw the signs that said mountain bikes, and I chuckle. You know, I chuckle to myself too about that. I thought it was quite funny. You know, the mountain bike. I mean, they look good. Like I used to mountain bike way back when, like off trail biking for a very short period. Until my bike fell apart. Never bought a new one. Anyway, it's just funny to see that in the mountains. Yeah, it's not Canadian mountains, but it's good territory for it. It looked really cool. That was into Germany though. That was closer to the river, and north of Arnhem too. Had a good chunk of it, like I said. No, it was not taxpayer funded. It was private donation. Yeah, raised by regimental associations, which are completely separate. They have nothing to do with the actual regiments, technically, financially. It's its own thing. People paid out of their own pocket to come to, and people connected to it, civilians, all that stuff. So no, the army technically didn't have anything to do with it. It's all privately funded. They've been working on this since before COVID, so lots of changes. But no, it was not taxpayer paid for. No, it wasn't a staff ride, nothing like that. This was a different experience, and they just said they all enjoyed it. And because they had skin in the game, as the one guy kept saying, they had skin in the game, and it made a difference. Is there any other questions? Anything I missed? Please let me know. Yeah, I'm just seeing if there's any other things coming up on here. See if I missed anything. No. Any other questions? Anything else anybody wants me to talk about? But yeah, the Market Garden sites were cool. Horner Bridge is cool. I've watched that movie since I was a kid. Nijmegen's really nice. Doing the bridge walk was nice. Seeing the Nijmegen Bridge makes a lot more sense now, seeing that ground, because I've been reading about, the Nijmegen salient for a very long time. First Canadian Army was there for 4 months. Longer, 4 and a bit, after taking over from the airborne. They weren't expecting to be there that long, and then they were, because of the Battle of the Bulge. And then they move into Germany, and then back into the Netherlands. Crazy geography you guys got there with those borders, eh? It's kind of confusing. You're like, I'm in Germany. I'm back in the Netherlands. I'm in Germany again. Anyway, yeah, that was kind of cool, kind of confusing. But I really enjoyed my trip, and hopefully I get to go back. I really like the area, the Market Garden area. It's like, as I called it, the salient. Nijmegen. Yeah, it was really cool. Lots of great museums and military bases everywhere. So many. Oh, hi Wayne. Just popped on now. I'm going for about 2 hours now. But if anybody has any questions or anything else. So, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about Passchendaele. Oh my God. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Angela, I'll come back to that. I totally forgot about that. Scott wanted me to talk about Passchendaele. Scott Grimwood. Oh my God, I totally forgot about that. Sorry, Scott. I know you're not watching, but afterwards. Yeah, so hold on. He sent me an email. 1 second. Oh, he's got more than that. Oh, yeah, geez. Okay, so I'm going to do Passchendaele first. So he says he liked the film, but it tries to cover too much war and home front. I have seen, yes. Have you seen the film? I said, yes. And what's your opinion? My opinion is not a good movie. It's a terrible movie. Just movie perspective, period. It's not good. I didn't like it as a movie. I thought the acting was terrible. It was written. Sorry, one second. Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, Wayne. I'm not sure what that is. Alex Clark's. I don't know what that is. So yeah, the acting is terrible. The writing is terrible. Characters just don't care. It's like, yeah, whatever. I don't know who those people are. I don't care. The history is not good. I mean, things like I don't know if the uniforms, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the development of combat and say like how it actually goes to Passchendaele and it turns this like stab fest. Like, what the hell is that? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's this melodramatic soap opera-y version of the war, and people are saying it should be grateful because there's a Canadian story being told, and I'm like, it's not even a real Canadian story. It's something grafted onto a Canadian story and all that stuff. It's not good. I'm not a fan of it. It's not good history in the slightest, and I'm not saying movie should be or shouldn't be. It's not a good movie, period. Avoid it if you can. Don't watch it. It's not worth watching. It's just ridiculous. Not good. I can't keep saying that, but it's just not good. Not good at all. It's not a good movie. I mean, if you like it, I'm not going to say don't watch it, but just if you've never seen it, don't watch it. So yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. Oh, okay. Sorry, one second. I'm gonna get back to Angel's question here. Can you recommend some Canadian war films that are accurate? There's not many. Not really. Nothing current, unfortunately. And even some of the other ones aren't really accurate. I mean, they're fictional stories to begin with, set in like a historic setting, like Captain of the Clouds, right, with James Cagney. Like, that's just a fictional story. I mean, it's filmed using all the stuff, so I guess that's technically accurate, but it's a fictional story, so it doesn't really work like that. Like Devil's Brigade is not accurate. It's not even close. About First Special Service Force. It's not good. Not even that great of a movie. Kind of boring to me at times, anyway. That might be blasphemy, but that's how I felt. And then there's another Paul Gross war movie, Hyena Road, about Afghanistan. I can't speak to it. I've never seen it, but the Afghan vets I do know say it's terrible. So I believe them over Paul Gross. And he should have just stuck doing fictional stories about curling. He would have done himself much better. Yeah. So very cool. So unfortunately, it's not a good answer, Angela. I am sorry. There's not really many films to begin with. Hardly any to begin with. There just aren't any out there. Yeah, unfortunately. No. There's just hardly, you can't have accurate or inaccurate if you don't have anything. You know what I mean? Like, there's some like docudramas, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah, it's not quite the same, right? So I'm going to go back to Scott's questions because I feel bad because I forgot them. Okay, so this is the other ones I'm reading off my phone. Sorry, real quick here. From the Canadian perspective, is there a particular event or events that changed the Canadian-U.S. relationship from one of animosity to being a close ally? It's a long development. Oh my God. I mean, 1812, right? You've got the invasion. Even before that, there's fighting. Even before there's a Canada and a United States, right? There's New Englanders and the new, the settlers in New France are coming to blows in the wars before those are even two countries even having an identity in themselves. Fighting and stabbing each other for a very long time. And again, this is real quick, but then things like 1812 obviously come into literal blows and invasions, causing trouble. And it doesn't end there, right? There's things like the Fenians, which take place around the American Civil War, who are invading Canada, competently and getting slaughtered a lot of the times, except for Ridgeway. Yes, I know about the Battle of Ridgeway. You don't have to tell me, anyone commenting. Yes, it's American victory, but they still screw it up and still retreat back, so it doesn't make a difference. But then you have things like the rebellions in the 1830s, which have an American element, things like that. So that's where it starts to change, and kind of Scott's question there. That's where things change, is with those rebellions. Because they get crushed quite handily in both Upper and Lower Canada, which becomes the province of Canada after that because of that. Laura Durham's report, you can look that up on the Canadian Encyclopedia. they've summarized it a lot better than I can very quickly off the top of my head. However, why that's important is a video in a place I've been to is called the Battle of the Windmill, and it's not from Animal Farm, it's its own thing, is connected to all of that. And why I think that's important, it's a tiny little thing. I mean, it's a bunch coming across the St. Lawrence, and they try to take this tiny little place, and one of them, it's a windmill that gets turned into a lighthouse afterwards. They try to barricade themselves in, and it's actually cooperation between the U.S. Navy, Royal Navy, and Canadian militia. So I think like that is where this relationship starts to change. The Americans are not okay with people coming back in force across the border, fighting their neighbor. Obviously, Canadians aren't happy about it because you got these people coming in trying to kill you. So the Americans get involved in trying to stop it, right? And then you still have things like the Fenians and all of that. And that's when these things start to change. It takes still about the American Civil War, when there's still some animosity about that, right? Lots of Canadian support for the Confederacy, right? Because a weakened United States is better for Canada at the time, right? If that country's broken in half, you don't have to have a worry about them turning on you. They're turning on each other. That was the thinking. I'm not saying it was right to support the South because the South were terrible. It's things like that start to change. It's also bettering relations with Britain is what starts to get things better with Canada, because whatever's going on with Britain and the United States has a direct impact on Canada. And these things start to change into the 1880s, 1890s, when things are getting better between Britain and the United States. Canada's getting the splash back, and then Canada starts negotiating treaties. I think the first technical treaty Canada negotiates on its own is a fishing treaty with the United States. So that's when things start to change, from being, this aggressor to letting these things go, all of that stuff. It's a long process. I can't say there's one event because there isn't, but it's, Europeans start showing up, and then they're starting to battle each other. One speaks French, one speaks English, and it goes from there. It involves indigenous people, and it just takes forever. And it doesn't really stop until the late 19th century. I mean, it's not really coming to blows, but you have things like Ridgway and Fenian incursions into the 1870s. And then there's connections to the Northwest Resistance as well, sort of indirectly. American support for some of it, a little bit. Again, it's disputed into the 1880s, but after that, it stops. And they just start to work together because there's no point, because there's other looming threats across the ocean, i.e. Germany, and things change there. And that's really when the tone has changed, is by then. So hopefully that answers what Scott's looking for there. Okay, so number 2, Canada built a lot of materials for the Allied war effort in World War II, especially aircraft and ships, but does not seem to have the tagline like Arsenal of Democracy or an iconic figure like Rosie the Riveter. How is Canada's war production remembered in Canada? So, excuse me, one quick thing. Already talked about the Bren Gun Girl, Veronica Foster. She's the Canadian version. She's not as well known as Rosie the Riveter, obviously, because that's a worldwide iconic image of World War II. I mean, the Freedom Museum in Oosterbeek. Oh, that's the other museum we went to, the Freedom Museum in Oosterbeek, which used to be called the Liberation Museum. Looks like a big parachute because it is a big parachute. It's filled with air. Has a spot on Rosie the Riveter, and they were giving us the whole spiel that they give to big groups who come in. And I said, well, hold on, we got a Canadian version. And so I showed to everyone. As people were going out the door, I showed in the group on my phone. I'm like, look, this is her. So we do have that, and which is funny that Scott brought up the Arsenal of Democracy, which is the United States, right? And funny story about that is Canada was called the Aerodrome of Democracy because of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, which we talked about earlier. Now, it's often credited to Roosevelt saying that. Roosevelt never said it. It was in a letter that he did not write. It wasn't the same. So it wasn't FDR who ever said it. Never. Never, ever, ever said it. That letter was actually written by Pearson. Yeah. Pearson wrote it for Roosevelt, who just signed his name to it as the Aerodrome of Democracy. It hasn't really stuck. It's there. It comes up. It's quite funny. It's one of those stories, right? It's FDR never says it. It's actually Pearson, because Pearson says I wrote it. Because the State Department went around, normal diplomatic protocols, went around our, the external affairs at the time, went straight to Pearson and said, can you write a letter for him to write, for FDR to write to King our prime minister. And Pearson said, okay. So he did. And he's the one who came up with that. So it's there. It's not really remembered that well, unfortunately. I find it's a very local thing, right? Like if you live in a community that had production or had a big factory, like in Toronto, because again, Toronto is of that time is not the Toronto of today. It's not the biggest city in the country at the time. It's still very localized and still spread out. The GTA isn't just the sprawl on, the North Shore of Lake Ontario. Again, sorry everybody, I'm trying to rip on you, but it's fun to rip on the GTA as a London boy. It's depending on where you are. If your community had a strong impact on had a local tradition of manufacturing, that's different. But yeah, like the aircraft production in Toronto and the armor production in Oshawa, London, where I'm from, had a huge factory for armor vehicles. Things like that. So it's not a big legacy, and people are working on it to make that better known. All of that stuff. So there's a lot going on there. But yeah, it's not quite like that, but it's got a title. But again, like a lot of things, Canada gets overshadowed by our neighbors to the south because you guys are huge and will crush us if you turn over in your sleep, as sort of the famous saying goes. Okay, something about Alex Clark and Drachnafil. Okay, yeah. I don't know what that is. I guess they're doing a trip to Australia. I was just talking about funding for my own channel, which is I don't have much, so I'm not really sure what's going on with theirs, but apparently they're planning a big trip. Second Canadian Army. You mean Second Canadian Corps? Excuse me, was grown again. Yeah, I thought it was First Canadian Corps. I don't have any vids on that. No, I don't. I didn't even get to go to Grown again because it was kind of out of the way. I'd love to go back and go there because I know people who live there and want me to come visit and show me around to some of like the little things. Like I know the big stuff, but like little things that locals know. You know what I mean? So I'd love to cover that. But yeah, it's all First Canadian Army. I think it's one corps. Could be wrong. But anyway, yeah, it's the Canadians who, there's a fight in Groningen, right? This Dutch Knots, Dutch SS in there. They fight to the death, a lot of them, because they know what's going to happen. For the moment, starring Russell Crowe isn't too bad. I'm not sure what that is. Which one's that one? They have to tell me. I don't know what that is either. Sorry, I don't know what that is. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I don't want to go about Mark Clark. He gets enough attention. He made sure of that. About the whole Roman thing. So I did do this. I've already done this. I mean, you can't go to Chrysler's farm anymore. It's under the water. The actual old battlefield, only a small corner of it still survives, and it's just a park. Looks like any other Eastern Ontario empty land with some trees on it. It's under the St. Lawrence. They have the memorial, though, is up on a hill. It's nice. I was just there on a cold day, so it wasn't the greatest. So I've done that. There's a video on it on the channel, multiple. I did a whole, I called it my Eastern Ontario vlog, like a video blog of traveling. I went to there. I went to the windmill. I went to, where else did I go? Hill 70 Memorial in Mountain, Ontario. It's just so random. So very random. It's cool, though. It's the only Hill 70 one I know of in the country, other than the ones on Hill 70. So I've already done all that. And some of the Finian places, mostly in the Niagara escarpment and a few around Kingston. Kingston has some places, but again, just nothing that's accessible, to civilians, right? And some of it's on RMC. You can kind of get to it. It's kind of not the best idea to go poking around in there. And then Fort Henry too, but no fighting takes place at Fort Henry ever. Actually, its last major use was an internment camp during the First World War. They don't like to talk about that part, but that's what it was used for. And then it went into disuse after that. And then they rebuilt it all and everything like that. So there are places to go, and I've already done them. I'm hoping to do stuff with 1812 down in the escarpment maybe this summer. That'll be my next big thing, if I can get that to fit into my schedule. I will see if I can get that to work and hit places like Lundy's Lane and all that fun stuff, which is kind of cool. See where I can get to, like Beaver Dams, some of those battlefields that are still kind of around in the Niagara area. Yeah, we do have a Rosie. Yes, we do. Yes, it is, and that is kind of controversial. Canadians killing Indigenous and Métis peoples, and them killing each other. You know, Canadians, what we understand now is Canadians today killing each other is not great, and it's just it's a bit controversial today. Yes, Ronnie the Brun Gun Girl. Her real name was Veronica Foster, and I could do a vid on her because apparently she was really cool. She was only a worker for a little short time period though, which I think is really interesting. She got a better job. Again, don't blame her, but she has this face and then doesn't do it for very long. It's really cool. So it's good to know. So Pete, funny thing, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but my grandfather worked there. Yeah, he worked on those. He was 16, 17. I think he started working there while he was still in high school. Because he I don't know if he graduated. I don't know how it really worked back in the 40s. I don't know if he had it anyway. He worked as a salesman after that, so I don't think it really mattered after the war. But he worked there and then got conscripted and then signed up, as he called it. He just got called up because he was making good money, right? He was from a Depression era. His parents were farmers. And they got an opportunity to leave to take care of an elderly relative who had tons of money. So their station improved, and he got a job as a war worker and worked there. And he went, and before he passed, he liked to drive around and just go places because he could. He was retired, and he went into what's now Diamond Aircraft. And they rolled out the red carpet for him when they figured out who he was. And he loved that story. Loved telling that story. He felt so he loved telling it because it was important. But yeah, he worked there. I don't know if the building's still there because I used to be a member of the golf course that's right next to it. And one of the original buildings was still there. The best story he'd always tell was about the test pilot there. This guy had lost a leg at some point. I think he might have been a First World War veteran. I don't remember. But he couldn't fly in the RCAF because he lost a leg and had some vision troubles. But he said he was the best pilot and craziest pilot he ever met in his life. The thing this guy would do. Yeah, it's just bonkers. But anyway, yeah, I do have a connection to that. Yeah, he worked on the mosquitoes there up until the end of the war. Yeah, 2 divs. So yeah, it would have been 2 Corps. Yeah, lots of wood. Lots of wood. Oh, sorry. Which one's that one? Oh, is that the one with Russell Crowe? Oh, I have heard of that one. Yeah. All right, see you, Wayne. Thanks for coming out. Yes, I saw parts of that. Yeah, I saw a little bit of that. I just didn't get into it because I don't watch a lot of TV to begin with. But I heard a bits and pieces about that. But yeah, it's a topic that is rightfully getting more attention because it's a massive contribution, but it just has such a societal impact on Canada that is untalked about because we have that kind of leave it to Beaver kind of image of Canada and the post-war, which is just not accurate. It doesn't show a lot of the experience for people. Things changed. Women had jobs, and then they got them taken away. Literally, a lot of them they got them taken away from guys coming back, which again is a murky issue. I don't pretend to, I'm not judging. I'm just that's what happened. And that's what was done. It's just that has an impact. That's obviously going to have an impact on how the country operates. And again, everything's not like TV as it was presented. But yeah, it's there's a lot going on. Yeah, so it's and that's one of my work connections is my grandfather worked on the mosquitoes, which is just it's crazy to hear when you're as a kid and you hear about these things. What that thing was made out of. I mean, plywood and dreams, and how fast that thing could move. It's just boggling. It's mind-boggling of the story to hear of that as a kid growing up in the 90s, seeing F-16s flying around on TV all the time. Yes, it did, Phil. So didn't World War II war industry help Canada grow industrially afterwards? Big time. So prior to the war, Canada has manufacturing, but not much. Nothing like the scale afterwards. Before the war, and kind of gone back to that now, is Canada is largely agrarian, um, and minerals, right? Mostly minerals at the time, and raw natural resources, right? That's Canada from the beginning, right? Canada's funded for furs. That's why Canada exists. Beaver fur. Natural resources, right? That's going up until war gets declared, and then Britain goes, crap, what do we do here with those American neutrality laws and everything like that? So Canadians, the industry just booms like crazy, because they can take stuff from the US because of location, and Americans had already started to set up in Canada to begin with because they saw a business opportunity. Things like that. So it's massive. Like the aircraft industry doesn't really exist in Canada prior to the war. Then booms. It's still around because of that. Massive shipbuilding booms. There's hardly any shipbuilding that booms. Like this is where the automotive sector comes from. Canada had a homegrown industry that was tiny, mostly bought up by the Americans anyway. Right, but it booms because of the war, because of the production. We were talking about the CMPs, all that stuff. That's why Canada becomes kind of has such a boom in the economy, is because of the war industry, because of manufacturing is massive. Especially again, I'm from Southern Ontario, London area. A lot of the factories are gone now, but those started because of the war. Right, car manufacturing starts because of the war. You don't have these things without that. It would all have come from the US, where it was all done in Canada. Trucks and cars and manufactured goods and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Canada's economy is obviously changing now, but at the time and into the late 20th century, it's manufacturing that drives the Canadian economy. And it's because of the war, massive booms. It's all connected to, US neutrality laws and Canada having huge reserves of US dollars and getting stuff to Britain and the ports and all that stuff is all connected. But massive change in the country's makeup, because again, it's mostly an agrarian country up until 1939, and after that it never was again. It still isn't to this day. That's where most people move into the cities, and the smaller communities get bigger because people are moving closer together. They were spread out, and now we've really concentrated. Yeah. Plywood dreams and two Merlins. Well, that's what I think could move. Yeah. Yes. I mean, they had to. They didn't have a choice because they didn't have a choice. Yeah. Yes. Well, birch is good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, you have things like, the St. Lawrence Seaway. Well, that's, kind of, you have that come because of the war, but it takes longer, and there's other factors in the Cold War that play into that, and U.S.-Canadian relations. Trans-Canada Pipeline, though, is because of the war. Things that they've done in the Northwest, like the Trans-Canada highways, because of the Alaska highways, which is also its own thing, which is still usable. Kind of dangerous in points, but it's still usable. And the booming of Avro and the Canadian versions of it, and the everything that still exists. Yeah. Oh yeah, well, C.D. Howe, he's a figure that doesn't get enough attention. He's such a fascinating character. American by birth, actually, in education, I believe. He comes up and makes his money in grain elevator design and building, which falls apart at the time of the Depression. He gets elected, joins Parliament, rises up in the Liberal Party, and then becomes the minister for everything. He's an engineer, so he was in a unique position, and King trusted him too, which was a unique position to be in, because also he started to lose some trust in Howe because of the drinking. I'm getting him confused with Charles Power. Never mind. No, not Howe. Howe's in power forever. He was, literally the minister of everything. They put him in charge of anything industrial, and he was amazing. He had so many contacts. He knew how to talk the talk, walk the walk. which was needed because there was still tension between government and industrial leaders because of the Depression and things like labor strikes and how some of those were handled. And there was a lot of tension there. So Howe brought in that understanding to it and really got these things off the ground. So that he's and then he does a lot for the after the war, and especially the Cold War projects like the Doom Line and all that stuff. I mean, he's such a huge figure in Canadian history, period. And he just gets forgotten. You know, he does not well known outside of Ottawa because he's got a bunch of buildings named after him. Yeah. Oh, about the about the Anne Frank house. Yeah, maybe. I just didn't get a chance to check because I just had to stay relatively mobile. Yes, I mean, we all should, WS. War is shit, and death is awful, and we should avoid it at all costs. Oh, yeah. I mean, I talked about this earlier. Chubby Power. Sorry. Chubby Power. That was his nickname. I don't know why. He wasn't a big man. He was never chubby because his name was Charles. Maybe Chubby's just a Charles nickname. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, Canadian, well, I said this earlier, Canadian war production, so the totality of the war, outnumbers Germany's, Japan's, and Italy's for the entire conflict. Canada alone outproduces all three. Like, it's in Tim Cook talks about this in his book. Like, that's just one of his books. It's just mind-boggling to think about. I'm not saying that all the things that produced wood are the same, right? Canada's not making tanks. It's not like Canada could stand alone, but the output that Canada had was more than all three combined. That's not even taking account into Britain's smaller portions, which Britain's cranking out a ton. And then you add the Soviet Union and the United States to that mix. It's just, why take on these industrial powers that can produce you in an afternoon? What you can do in a month, they can do in a day. You know, like, that was just the dumbest thing you could do. It's just dumb. So dumb, but that's what happened. Yes, I mean, generally speaking, C.D. Howe Institute, if you're involved in that kind of thing, yeah. But if you ask a Canadian about the C.D. Howe Institute, they're going to go, "What's that?" You know, every person. And then if you ask them who C.D. Howe is, they have no idea. Is he related to Gordy? You know, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, Canada did make tanks sort of at the beginning. Sort of. That's a bit of a misnomer. Sort of. They did at the beginning. They modified Shermans to fit Canadian specifications, but it's not used in combat. And they don't. Well, some of them get used later. It's complicated. But the Allies eventually decide that the United States can just make them all. And they did. That's where all the Shermans come from, is the United States, because they could outproduce. There's no point in the rest of us making them, and you can just make them and ship them as easily as we could. And then things like Cromwell's and all that is Britain, but the Shermans are made in the United States. It's all of that. I mean, it was a decision to made. Canada doesn't really make the tank like the Americans make the tank, and then they adjust it. Same with the Sexton. It's not a tank. It's a self-propelled gun, technically, but it's also not made, you know, from ground up by Canadians. It's not the same. It's different in that sense. Like, the production is done elsewhere, right? So it's not a Canadian-made tank, if that makes any sense. Yeah, but again, kind of, I guess the same. The Rams, the Grizzlies. It is and it isn't. It is, but it's not. It's a complicated thing, and then, I'm getting to the Valentine in a second. Kangaroo, that's a whole other thing. That's done in theater and stripped down, and those are different. Those are the Rams, but again, that's not quite the same. It's also not a tank. It's complicated. The Grizzly, actually, because it got shipped to Spain. They gave it to Franco, and then they brought it back, which is kind of awkward. But yes, it was used in Band of Brothers. And still at the War Museum, you can go look at it if you like. You can't see much because it's in a weird spot and you can't get around it, but you can go look at it. And yes, so the Valentines, that's where this is. So there are made tanks. Yes, Canadian made tanks. Valentine's one of them. And most of them do go to Russia, go to the Red Army. One was actually pulled out of a swamp in Ukraine, 98, something like that. Pull it out of the swamp and give it back to us, and it sits in the floor of the War Museum. It's actually really cool. I have a short on about it on the channel. I can do really much more than that because there's not much to the story. It's an under a minute long story of the guys got out. The crew got out as this thing slowly sank in the swamp. Sounds like something out of Monty Python, slowly sank in the swamp. They all got out. They pulled this thing out decades later and said, "Here, have it back." So now it sits in Ottawa on the floor of the. I think it's next to Stewart, maybe. I can't remember. The Lee tank. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's just chilling there next to the Panther and the Easy 8 and all this stuff. It's the only one that's had the crap beat out of it and not restored. Yeah, so there's a lot there, tons of stuff in the War Museum, and that is worth one checking out because that's got a cool story behind it. It's soft combat. So yeah, there are Canadian-made tanks. I'm not saying that there's not. It's only a couple hundred, 800, something like that. Some of them get adapted later on. Some stay for training purposes. All that fun stuff. But yes, the Soviets love using the Valentines. I don't know why. They just seem to love them. But yeah, the War Museum's got lots of good stuff like that. And yes, back to CD Howe. Yes, it's a right-wing think tank. Yes, it's a think tank, but it purely, occasionally pops up in the news for polls and things like that. But I don't think a lot of people know what it is, to be honest with you. Unless you're a political science nerd, it's not going to come up much for you. And because we have so few think tanks in this country to begin with, people don't even think we do have them. And we do, just hardly any. Okay, I don't think there's any other questions. If there's anything else, please let me know. Oh, Hamilcar gliders. I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I thought that was American only. Could be wrong. I don't know. Could be very wrong. Any other questions? Fire away. I mean, we've been doing this for 2.5 hours, which is cool. Yeah, the U.S. Renault. Yeah, the scrap, right? We bought it for scrap. Oh no, we're still using it. That thing is tiny. I don't know how they got in that thing. That one you can get a pretty good look at because you can kind of get around it. Hamilcar are British, yeah. Horsa and Hamilcar. I know I'm not a glider expert. Don't claim to be. Anyway, but yeah, so they bought them as scrap to get around the U.S. neutrality laws and then just use them as tanks for training. But there's one in the War Museum. Man, that thing is tiny. I don't know how anyone gets in that damn thing. It's got a shovel on it that takes up most of the tank. All right, Rosehent. If I said that correctly. Have a good night. Yeah, it's getting late for you guys over in Europe. It's getting late here. Well, 9:30 feels late. Yeah, no, of course, Phil. Thanks for coming. Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming out. Again, I appreciate you guys just kind of hanging out. It was nice. I love doing this. Again, if you're not a patron already, please consider becoming one or a YouTube channel member. Those are gratefully helpful to keep doing this. I know we talked about that a bit earlier with the patients, but yes, I am young. I understand that. But again, I'm just trying to, as you guys know, a lot of you know, because you guys have been following me for years now, just try to be real with things. Just trying to figure out what's going to look like for the future. Just try to be real and straight up with you guys. I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop the pace I'm on. I love the pace I'm on. I hope the pace can get quicker. Not quicker, but I can do more. And if I can have more support that way, I can do more and I can do better and I can cover more. You know what I mean? Oh, thank you, Pat. That's greatly appreciated. You already helped me out, so it's greatly appreciated. Any little bit is massive. Thank you. It makes a huge difference. Like I said, trying to do things and keep up software And you too, Willie. Thank you so much for all your support. I have a beer. I think I'm just gonna go veg watch some TV. Maybe we'll have a beer. But yeah, I do appreciate it. Any support, just watching is huge. Letting the ads play is massive. Again, I'm just trying to be straight up with you guys. But because yeah, I don't want to stop and I want to keep covering these stories. It's just there's a lot to do. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to cover. It's a lot to schedule. It's just a lot. And it's just me. I don't have a team, right? The team is me. Is me and my cell phone. That's the team. But yes, you're right, GD. More guests. Well, I just want to do more live streams anyway because I just enjoy them. I know you guys get a lot out of them. I want to just do more because I want to do more. Yeah, the editing thing is nice. I don't like to edit. You know what? I'm changing my mind on it a little bit. I like it a little more. Yeah. So it's changing my opinion anyway. But I just want to do more live streams because there's so many great people out there with so much more knowledge in certain areas than me, or they bring a different subset of knowledge. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying. I just love doing them. I love talking to people. I love with you guys on the side chat. Like the sidebar makes the live streams. The guests are fantastic. They are enthusiastic. They know a ton. They're experts. It's amazing. But you guys is what you make it what it is. You know what I mean? I love singing praises of you guys because you guys know your stuff. You know more than me in other areas like the gliders. You guys got me beat on the gliders. Even though I've been in one, which is cool. I've been in a Horsa, the one that's left, the chunk of it anyway at Pegasus Bridge. I think it's a Horsa. Again, I could be wrong. Doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, you guys got things like that. So it means the world to me to have you guys and have a community because like I've said this multiple times before. When I grew up, I didn't really have a community like this. Even into my undergrad, the other people in history didn't really seem to care. Whereas you guys care, and it means the world to me. So I don't want to lose that. I guess that's why I'm so worried about it. I don't want to lose this because it means so much to me to have this in my life. So I just getting to do this and building a community that cares about Canadian military history or military history in general, and it's coming and we're converting you into loving Canadian military history. It's even better. I mean, it means the world to me. So thank you, everyone. And thanks for Sean and Pat helping out. I really appreciate it. And you guys are already supporting me through YouTube, which is fantastic. And you keep doing it. And it means the world to me. So any support you guys can give, anyone you can share things around, any of it is great. And all of that is good. So just quick updates on what's coming up. I've already got it scheduled. I got Ian Pegg coming on. Some of you may know who he is. Some of you might not. I don't have it on here. You can find it on the webpage. It's already linked and ready to go. He's talking about British and Canadian Army chaplains in the Second World War. He's going to run, I think he's picked a good chunk of them, talk about the stories and everything. And if for those of you connected to the We Have Ways, you should know who Ian is. I'm looking forward to that, getting the guests back on. Like I said, I think that's coming up. And sorry, I just saw Kevin's comment. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I got some more things, some more irons in the fire. I don't want to say anything yet because it's not 100% finalized, but I got some cool stuff coming, some different stuff. That's what I like to do, right? Sometimes it's about the knowledge. Sometimes it's about certain individuals and their work they're doing. Our museum has something to promote and we can get insights and everything like that. I try to do that differently than some other channels. So that's kind of what's coming up because I'm getting back into it and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again. And yes, I don't want to let Kevin down. Thank you, WS. I appreciate you saying that. I'm not a serving member of the military. Even people think I am. I'm not. Never have been. It's not the same. This is, to me, seems as what it should be. If that doesn't sound super corny, like this is the bare minimum I can do. And it still doesn't feel like enough. Okay. You sure you want this, Kevin? You sure? I'm not a Leafs fan, never have been. I'm French Canadian, half French Canadian, and you know how that goes with being a Habs fan. It's what did Jay Baruchel's book, Born Into It? It's 100% accurate. I'm a Habs fan until all death. Didn't have a choice. I was a Habs fan before I was born. Don't like the Leafs, don't like the Bruins. I don't like any other team. Habs are my team. Leafs are out, don't care. If they're in, they're out. That doesn't matter to me. I don't want them to win, but I don't want any other team to win. So not a fan. But I mean, it seems, I don't know if they're cursed or what it is. I don't know. And Pete, I was 1 year old. As I know. They won a round. Yay. Montreal is terrible. Supposedly has made the Cup final, and Toronto can't even wins one game in the second round for the first time in 20-something years. It doesn't matter who seems to be in charge of that team. Doesn't matter who they have. They can have how many top 5 picks, and it still doesn't make a difference. Kind of makes me a little happy because I grew up as a Habs fan in London, Ontario, with a French-Canadian last name. So it feels a little happy that this is happening. Yeah, because I'm tired of hearing about it. So it's nice that it'll be quiet until October at least. But I'm not a fan. I'm not a Leafs fan. Never have been, never will be. Habs all the way. Sorry. Last time when they had that cup run, I was extremely happy. I'm not going to hide it. They've sucked last couple of years, but I think they're going to be right back there. I'll talk Habs all day, but Leafs, whatever. Sorry. Not a fan. Anyway, hopefully that doesn't make anybody leave the channel. Please don't leave the channel because I'm a Habs fan. Please don't. But yeah, so thanks everyone for watching, hanging out. It was great to do a Saturday night live stream. I've never done one before. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully I can do more like this coming at some point. My May is going to get crazy busy. So, but I'm going to have regular live streams. Unfortunately, they're going to be mostly weeknights. I know that sucks. Some Brits are still hanging around because you guys are intense. Yeah, Willie, I don't know how you're still awake, man. That is dedication. Same with Phil. Go to bed, guys. But yeah, just quick. Yeah, they're mostly going to, unfortunately, going to be like during the day here in North America or at night here in North America. So yeah, so it is what it is. Unfortunately, but try to make both sides of the Atlantic happy as possible. But you can always watch them afterwards. And if you get your questions to me ahead of time, I can get them in there too. That's always a possibility, especially patrons, because I check that all the time. You know that. You can get them that way. Or if you're through the YouTube channel, you can get a hold of me too. Or just ask and I can get you direct connect. Anyway, so I'll let everybody go. You guys get to sleep and have a good night. And I'll see you next this week coming up with Ian on the channel, which I'm looking forward to. Other than that, everyone have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next time. Have a good night, everybody.